Clint volunteered me.
Hey, Steve, can you by chance move that poinsettia back behind you? I just can't see Jackie. Okay. Masks on.
That is a crime.
It is.
Everybody should be able to see Jackie.
All right. I would like to welcome everybody out to our work meeting for the Harriman City Council for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. We will start with a review of this evening's agenda. Any items that we need to make changes to? Okay. Future agenda items. Any items that this council would like to see added to a future agenda?
I have one item that came up in a discussion earlier this week about, the question was raised, what happens when an HOA disbands? What impact does that have on the city? I'd like to see that on a future agenda item to fully understand what the impacts, obligations, or especially fiscally to the city if an HOA disbands and what that means. And then also possibly consider, maybe this would be in Chase's wheelhouse, to any draft ordinances that we might consider that would help offset some of the possible negative impacts of that happening in the city. Seems like there's a lot of people who just don't like their HOAs, but aren't worried about the impacts that it has on our budgets and maintenance and upkeep and all of that kind of stuff. So I'd like to see that on a future agenda.
Is there by chance a particular HOA that we're concerned about?
No, it's just been a topic of conversation that came up. One person said, this isn't happening, but what would happen if? So,
Okay.
So can I tag
asking for a friend, you know?
So can I tag onto that also, and maybe you've already asked for that, but as part of that, just understanding all the HOAs that we actually have. So is that what, when you're asking?
That's a good idea.
The financial impact, how many HOAs do we even really have? What areas are impacted by HOA?
And
Because
I think
I think our GPS already kind of tracks all that, right?
Can I ask a little bit about that?
Yeah, without getting into too much too, I think, Blake, this ties into something you do because we had this conversation in a recent meeting about whether or not a private maintained road should have to meet city standards, you know, those kind of things. And so I think all of these issues kind of tie in together, but go
That's what I
ahead,
was
Blake.
going to ask is how much in depth do you want us to go? Do you want to just look at infrastructure? I think we could go really open-ended and go, but it could take a long time. Maybe a little direction, like what does the presentation you want us to give kind of look
I'm
like?
guessing that the impact.
I don't know, Blake, what is the presentation I want to hear?
Well, for me, and the first place I went when you brought that up, Steve, was really the infrastructure, and in particular, roads, because that's where a lot of time we get private roads and the HOA that govern those so that they can reduce those down from the normal city standard.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I guess I would like to know the legal position on somebody that wants to try and dissolve or potentially dissolve an HOA and try and, I guess, put that responsibility on the city when they don't meet our city standards for public streets and those types of things, and what legal obligation we would have to either take them on and what legal stance we would have to say no. That for me is really the biggest position is legally what are the options there. And then I think then you can go into, I guess, some of the nuances, but I really think that those are kind of the crux of at least in my mind.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points. I think there are sometimes little park amenities and stuff like that, and we'd want to know how that works out. But I think there's this issue of trying to understand if there is a disconnect or and this is ignorant speaking here, is if a development is set up with private roads as part of an HOA, does that change the impact fees that they have to pay? Does that change anything else that's going on?
Nope.
So what is the ongoing advantage to them doing it private? Is it just to make an exception to our city standards?
So I'll answer what my opinion is on that, and this is just an opinion. This body, and not necessarily the members that are sitting here now, but this body in the past has been always happy to see a developer come in with private roads and an HOA, so they don't have to pay for snowplow. So the city doesn't have to pay for snowplows. City doesn't have to pay for infrastructure. The city doesn't have to pay for all that, and we still get all of the money that would have come for those impact fees.
I understand.
I, for years, have been against that. You can ask Blake. Blake knows how I feel very strongly about this, that we should not allow private roads that don't meet our city standard. They can be private all they want, but I'm very strongly believe that we should not allow private roads that are not city standards, because eventually we are going to get to the point where these HOAs realize that all it's going to take is us to dissolve with a vote of 51%, and all of a sudden it's the city's problem. And that would be my guess, but that would once again go to our attorney to ask what is the actual downfall. But I'm assuming that if they abandon the roads, which is what would essentially happen, if they abandon those roads, that we would, essentially become responsible for maintaining them. Either that, or we could, there'd be a fight over who owns the road, and I don't think we want that at all. So
No, I don't think so either, but you can understand the question is then, what if the road doesn't meet standards? What if our snowplows can't fit down there? What if there are repairs that are needed? How is that handled? Who pays for that? Are there assessment opportunities? Are there not? All of those questions are kind of outstanding in my mind because I just don't know how any of those pieces would work.
So I am completely supportive of having that discussion, because I'm going to guess that right now there isn't anything. And I agree that we should probably put something into the books that says, if you want to dissolve your HOA, you have to meet these requirements first.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
right now there's no requirement,
I agree.
because I've asked.
Does that give you any
I think so.
clarity or direction?
I had some concern if we wanted to get into the discussion about like some HOAs, if they disband, now they're not taking care of the roofs of their condos or things like that. The reserve funds, what happens to those? So I don't know if you wanted to go into that side of it or
I
just
don't.
stay
No.
over on the infrastructure side.
No, I think we want to stay on infrastructure, because that's really what's ultimately going to become our responsibility if an HOA decides to really go down that road, and it'd be better for us to have something in place now that addressed that, so that when they did go to disband, that we could just simply say, hey, here is the city code, this is what you have to do to do
Yeah,
it.
but I think the appropriate would thing, do we have something that helps the city and our residents through that process to make it the best process it can be and get the best outcomes? So right now, I don't think there is any, as you said, so I'd like to have that discussion, so. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Ooh, that was fun. Any other items for a future agenda? Okay, leadership task list review. We just had that sent out to us. Any questions or concerns on that?
Nice work, Jackie, that was awesome.
I do have a question. I'm trying to, as I was looking through, when is I heard a random date on the general plan copy for us to see. When was that supposed to come to us?
So at the joint meeting next week, you will receive in your packet a link to a PDF of the chapters of the draft plan. You'll see it all formatted. There'll also be a separate link to the future land use map, basically the general plan map. We thought that might be easier to view electronically. If you would like, we could produce a copy and have it available at the meeting next week.
That sounds great.
But that'll be in your packet.
Thank you.
I've got one quick thing, and I don't know if if it's more appropriate on the task list or just as maybe a future work meeting discussion item. Obviously, we've had a lot of challenges during the pandemic in terms of some of the projects that were starting to get some ground in our city, in particular the development of the Automall area. And I think that because of the pandemic and then other obviously concerns that have been brought up, from this body as we've moved through that process, one of the thoughts that I've had, and you guys can chime in where you want, is, this is obviously the Automall, the whole prospect of it is new to us. We've obviously never had a dealership in here. We've never had to deal with a developer or the components of, trying to get a dealership in here. But we have lots of examples around us of cities that have. So my thought is if the council was amenable, maybe we reach out to one of those other entities, a Draper, a South Jordan, a Sandy, any of those that have dealt with those that can at least shed some light on the process that they had to go through in order to really come to agreements to get those dealerships in there. because we definitely still have options of ways to get those dealerships in here. But again, it's not a process that we're familiar with, and honestly, one that I'm not familiar with of ultimately what some of those cities had to do to come to those agreements. And I think it might be beneficial for us to hear from one of those other entities about their processes to help us understand it and how we can try and find a path forward to really make that vision that we've had so many years there, come to fruition. So just a thought, like I said, I don't know if it's on the task list or more of just a future discussion item, but I wanted to get the temperature from the rest of the council.
I was curious, Wendy, do you know if like Heather and her team, have they done that? Have they reached out to other cities and coordinated those types of things?
I'll defer to Tammy on that.
We have talked to other cities just to kind of get an idea of, the process that they've gone through, but we haven't gone into a lot of depth on it. And I mean, in hearing what you're saying, I really do think that it would be a good idea for all of us to hear. And even if maybe council would want it to go through the Community Development Committee first or something like that, but I think it might be a good idea to do something like that where they come in and kind of let us know what they learned from it, and then what worked for them and what didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Because
that could
the one
help
thing
us.
that I think is safe to say is that auto dealers do not come knocking on your door saying, we have to be in your city. I think it's really the reverse, that we have to court them, and we have to find a way to make them see and help entice them or incentivize them to take that venture with us. And that's the part I don't understand, and I would like to understand more. So I think if the council was amenable, I would love to see it be something that we discussed at the full council.
I'm
Like
fully
a work
supportive.
meeting agenda item?
Yeah.
I think that'd be great, yeah.
I'm fully supportive. The only concern I have is that I just would not want to put another municipality that might be in direct competition with us in an awkward situation of trying to support us when they are also directly competing
Yeah.
with us. So that's the only concern I might have.
No, I
But
think
in
that's a fair
principle-
statement.
But in
And
principle, love it. I absolutely would love to hear it.
honestly, I think, obviously, South Jordan has been through that, but they do share a border with us. That may be one, to your point. A Draper or Sandy is far enough away, has been through the process. Maybe those would be more appropriate to look to.
Absolutely. And if South Jordan wants to come, like I'm not gonna turn them, but I would hate to put a strain on relationships between the cities saying, hey, we're trying to do the same thing you are in a relatively similar location. Tell us how to do it, so,
Let's leave it up to staff to find the
but
most
yeah,
appropriate
so-
contact for us.
but absolutely supportive, and I would love to hear it. I think it's a fantastic idea, so
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, if there's no, what? Go ahead, Jared. Thank you, Jared. All right, if there's no other items, we will move on to item 2.1. That is 13800 South Property Ownership Options. Blake.
All right. 13800 South. Okay, we spoke about this, I had in my notes September 23rd briefly. It was just kind of an impromptu discussion at that time, and so this one's a little bit less impromptu, a little more prepared. So 13800 South is located with our little, let's see if I can get the yellow dot to come on, there it is. So this is kind of where we're talking, and we're actually talking about an area that is not in Harriman. It's in Riverton and Bluffdale. And so we zoom in a little bit more, you can see this is where the Mountain Ridge development's located, and 138th is anticipated to extend from the Riverton, Bluffdale, Harriman border, going west and then tying in with Mountain View Corridor northbound. And so it bisects the Mountain Ridge development between Riverton and Harriman. And the reason we're coming to you is because Riverton is called. We own some of the roadway that's located in Riverton, and Riverton is requesting that Harriman deed them the property that we own in their city. So it's this location here that I've highlighted. And we'll zoom in a little bit more, and I got a map. The green area shows where Harriman owns property. So you can see the majority of the property we own, it's about 1.2 acres, is located in Riverton. It's the north side of the road. It's the existing road. It's paved, it's sidewalk, it's got curb and gutter, it's got street lights, it's finished. And then the little tip of the triangle where you can see going into Bluffdale, that gets really interesting there. There's a piece of that property that goes across someone's backyard. It's been landscaped. I went back on Google Earth and looked, and it's been landscaped since the beginning of time.
That was nice of them.
or somewhere near there. And so it's been landscaped before we even owned the property. It was landscaped. And so I went and visited the site a couple weeks ago, took some pictures. Here's a picture standing where the arrow points, looking to the east. You can see the Bluffdale side of the road. So the road is bisected right down the middle between Bluffdale and Riverton. And we own, obviously, the Riverton side. It's paved on both sides, and then as you get towards the far east end, as you get to the canal trail crosses here, and Bluffdale's piece is paved a little bit more than Riverton's piece. But that's what it looks like from that side, and then from the other side, that's what it looks like.
Do we allow them to pave it and improve it?
The people that own the property before us must have. And so let's talk about who owned it
How did
before
we
us.
acquire ownership of that?
Great question. Here it is. So South Farm LLC was acquired by Rosecrest Communities, and I went back in the county records, and October 20th, 2011, a deed was recorded, deeding it from South Farm to Rosecrest. And then February 1st, 2018, Rosecrest deeded it to Harriman. We did not have to sign that deed. I was unaware of it for some time afterwards. I think one day I was just looking around at parcels, and I clicked on that and saw that we owned it. Probably about a year after it was deeded to us, and I was like, that's weird.
Why did they deed it to us and not Riverton?
I don't know. Probably because Rosecrest is used to deeding us property and not Riverton.
But I think that's a pretty important question. How did we obtain
Yeah.
this property and why?
And so I don't know why, and it was just, here, the deeds on the right-hand side of the screen that you can see, since it wasn't a special warranty deed or anything, we didn't have to sign for it.
They just gave
You
us
can
land.
deed property to
got it.
anybody you want. And when they get the tax notice, which I don't know, I think that's when we noticed it. We got a tax notice, and I was looking around at property ownership, and it was just weird. So we got the property, and then Riverton called about a year later after that and said, we'd like to have that property because we want to extend the road up through Mountain Ridge. And so the reason also that I show the ownership here is that depends on if the council decides to surplus the property. If it was deeded by plat and right-of-way, it's a vacation. But where it's deeded by a deed, or not dedicated by plat is a vacation, deeded by a deed is a surplus process. So I just got this, I have this last slide that just kind of is a summary of our discussion, but the surplus process, we have an SOP that we've written on if we have surplus property. As I go through it, if it's a roadway like this, it says follow the ordinance. So we have an ordinance for that as well. And the ordinance is we determine a value. If it's less than $250,000, I'd have to rely to Chase on this, but I think we put out a notice if the council directs the staff to surplus it. We put out a notice in the newspaper. It has to be out to 3 sources, goes out for 14 days. We collect public comment during that 14 days. And then at the end of that time period, the council decides if they want to proceed with surplusing it or pull it back and keep it, and then decide how you want to get rid of it, what the highest and best use is at that point.
I want to make just a quick distinction here. You say Harriman owns portions of the right-of-way. That means we own the physical property of the road, correct? Not just a right-of-way easement, correct?
Yeah, we're fee simple owner of the property that the roadway is in.
Follow-up question then, Blake, is since we do own it, who has or have we, who has been paying to maintain?
The cities that it's in.
Riverton has been paying to maintain it.
The Riverton's been paving it and putting the pavement treatments on. This was the location, I think, a couple years ago where they had green foam coming out of the storm drain, if you remember that, because I don't remember exactly why it happened, but this was where that was happening.
Have we made a phone call to Rosecrest and asked them why they deeded us this property just barely 2 years ago? It's not even a long time ago.
Yeah, I've talked to them about it, and they were like, oh, we're offloading our property. I think it's part of their trust where they're trying to keep their property. They can't hold property for a certain time, and they were just like, okay, these are the properties we don't need. And someone just went through and signed deeds, and everything went to Harriman. So that's what it sounded like to me. They didn't really have a great answer as to exactly why.
That never happens to me. Do you guys?
I mean,
There's
It'd
1.2
be
acres
nice.
for free. You can't do
I've been asked to sign papers, but no one's ever signed them to me.
To give me a road for so long.
yes.
So I guess just in summary, the Riverton wants to extend 13800 South as part of their portion of the Mountain Ridge development. I think they're approaching their planning commission approval process with all of that. And so Harriman owns these portions that I showed you. And then we're looking for the direction. I think in the staff report, I gave 3 options. There's probably a lot more than that, but one of the options is do nothing and hold it. And another option would be to deed it all to Riverton and let it be their problem. And then the other option would be, and I think this would cost us a little money, would be to go in and split up and figure out what part you give to Bluffdale, what part you give to Riverton, what part you maybe give to the private property owner. And that could get a little complicated and messy and cause more issues.
So are we, if we don't do that, are we, can you go back to the map of the actual parcel?
It seems that if we do nothing, it really complicates the process of Riverton trying to facilitate this road, extending this road.
Why is that?
I
There's an existing road, it's built, it's there. What obstacle does that provide them building the additional?
I think it's the road
Build on our
into,
property unless we,
it's the road into the development. They can't build on our property without our approval.
Yeah, I think they're just worried about the what-ifs there.
I mean, we can build on our property. I mean, we're talking about 138 South is going to be a bifurcated road too, right? 138 South is going to be half owned by each city.
But then you're looking at, but on that part where it's actually our land, they have to get agreement from, a different agreement. It's not just like an interlocal, would be my understanding. I do have a question though, that I was trying to get to.
So my question still remains. I'm not 100% sure why this would be an obstacle to completing the road. There's a process to go through for it to complete the road, but it doesn't necessarily prevent the road from being completed, correct?
And I think that's exactly right. I just feel like they're asking for it just to get rid of any what-if conditions that could happen in the future. There's an unknown if we own it. We could maybe say, nope, you're not building on our property. And so I think they're worried about that, and they're just trying to clear the way so that there's no hindrance when they get to that point.
Or there could be them coming back and saying, we'll put in the improvements, but because you own it, you get to maintain it.
And that has been said.
So the question I've been trying to get to here is, if we were to simply just give everything to Riverton, wouldn't we be doing the exact same thing that Rosecrest did to us by taking that land that's in Bluffdale and giving it to another city that's not in Bluffdale?
Well, at least they're aware of the situation before we do it.
Yeah, and so, so that's a great question, and that's kind of what I'm here asking. Do you want us to split it up and give it to each city? I do know that in a recent meeting, Bluffdale has stated that they do not, well, one of their mayor has stated that he does not want this road to connect. And so that could be
Okay.
of a concern. I don't know which way the council wants to go. That's just something
No,
to be aware
that
of.
is a helpful piece of information. Thank you.
well, how much, I mean, this looks like a flagpole that I'm really familiar with, a flagpole. We had to pay pretty good, we had to do some trading on a flagpole we just did with UDOT. Right? We didn't just give it away.
Yep.
So why are we just giving it away?
And that's the council's discretion. If you want to talk about trading.
And it would
when
be just want to make sure, based on what you said earlier, there's an SOP for us to follow in dispersing of this property. Is that correct? I'm not sure under what grounds we would say we shouldn't follow that SOP. I'm just, I'm
Is this,
trying to
isn't
understand
this
what it
the
is you're asking
SOP?
us to say yes or no to.
And the SOP I guess the direction from here would be, we
Follow
direct
the
you to go
SOP.
surplus the property, and then we'd go through the process.
But this is them following that SOP, asking us what they want us to do with that. That's all that.
I guess part of that doesn't allow us the opportunity to just give away 1.2 acres of,
You wouldn't have to give it away per se. You could direct to sell it for fair market. You get to determine the highest and best use.
Okay.
If the highest and best use is giving it to Riverton, or if it's selling it for fair market value, or if it's trading it for existing property that Riverton owns in the city.
okay,
We
understood.
have that too, so.
Highest and best value, that's our determination to make.
So
Highest and best use, yeah.
besides the one thing that we talked about previously, what is a good trade?
So,
Some trade options, I didn't see.
so the only property that I'm really aware of that Riverton owns in Harriman is the area around the tanks near Rosecrest Plat X.
The mess.
And so there's that piece of property.
I thought we'd already worked out an
Yeah,
agreement to
the
switch those.
unlandscaped mess.
So that's all part of a UDOT right-of-way agreement, and UDOT right-of-way is
That's why.
as fast as lightning. So we have not had UDOT's approval to surplus any pieces along Mountain View corridor yet. I don't know, I don't have a time frame when they will do that. So,
I heard Costco's going in, maybe we could trade something like that.
I actually would like Chase just to at least offer an opinion on the, the issue of it being in both cities, and if we move forward with the surplus process, what your recommendation would be on how to deal with that issue.
No, I think Blake's done a great job of explaining where we're at already. I think a few things we're missing is, we don't have an appraisal of the roadway, do we?
no, we don't.
So we don't really know what the fair market value is of that. There are a couple of things that Blake has explained that we could do that I agree with. You know, we could say, there's some maintenance costs associated with this. It would be easier for us just to get rid of it than to assume those maintenance costs and potential liability costs going forward. But that would be hard to know unless we had an appraisal and a background understanding of what the value of that property is. But like Blake mentioned, we do have SOPs. We also have an ordinance that requires us to follow certain procedures in disposing of this. So I think regardless of what we decide to do, those requirements still need to be followed, but the manner in which we dispose of it is again, up at your discretion. So I don't know if that answered all of your question, Councilmember Smith.
There's the additional question of, that Clint brought up earlier that I want to reiterate here is, we don't necessarily want to take a step that would impair the road being completed either.
That's, yeah.
And so we want to make sure all things done in wisdom and order here. If we need to complete the road before we do this, maybe that's something we need to work out with Riverton via agreement or something like that too. But we absolutely have to have that road connected, so.
So is there, one of the options that I'm thinking of that might resolve some of the value issue is there any reason we can't deed the land to Riverton but maintain a road easement on that land as part of the deed?
Yes, you could.
Because in my opinion, that easement is what protects us with the ability to keep that road going through as we want.
You're talking about the Bluffdale side specifically?
On both parts,
On both
on
sides.
the entire thing. I mean, we have it, might as well slap an easement on the whole thing, right? So then we have an easement that requires that we have a road through there in perpetuity, right? But that I think would negate some of the value that would come off of it because now it's encumbered. And so that to me means that we've maintained the value of that as far as ownership, but allows us to give the maintenance and those kind of responsibilities to this, which they're already doing. So then we can give the land itself to the city of Riverton so that they can maintain the road as they are already doing. And there's, we have that ability to make sure that a road
Right, and
continues
there's
to go through.
probably the finance guy in me figures there's a present value of the ongoing maintenance of this road in perpetuity, right? What a net present value is, and we might be able to make an adjustment to the fair market value based on that,
Between
ongoing operations and maintenance of the road.
and an easement, because an easement will devalue the road, right?
But if it's already been used for a public purpose for this long, aren't they responsible for taking care of it because they're utilizing it for a public purpose?
We talked a little bit about that. I don't know if there's an obligation for maintenance. There's definitely a public expectation for it. It's kind of like Gina Road, right?
Yeah,
There's,
and we
it's
maintained
been
that for a long
used for
time.
so long, but
It's not dedicated public. It's,
there may be some argument that it's dedicated by use too.
it could be,
but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's been more than 10 years.
I didn't even get into that
It had
discussion
to
with my
have been because
presentation.
it's 2011.
It hasn't been 10 years then. It's only
But
been
I bet
9 years.
that was
When
the
they
first
deeded
deed.
it to, when Rosecrest got it was 2011.
Yeah, we've only had it for 2 years.
But I'm just saying, that's been, how long have these homes been in?
They've been there a while.
Yeah,
Quite some
so
time.
it's only has to be 10 years, and then it's public by right of use, right?
Yeah, but but that's a city enforcement, not a, I mean, that's where the city would come in, not necessarily someone,
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it feels like that there might already be an obligation by Riverton to have to maintain it
So-
because of the
So
citizens.
I think the mayor brought up a good point, and one that obviously we're all interested in making sure that there is the ability for that road connection to be made. I think we all see that that's important. So the idea of an easement on there, is intriguing to me. In terms of just the ownership of the property, one, we got it. We didn't even know that we had it. We got it for nothing. It's in another city. I'm not concerned about honestly, about the value of the property and making sure that we get something out of it as I am about making sure that that easement is protected for the connection. And so I would be very comfortable, again, where possible, I think ownership of property by us in another city, and I know we've had a recent example of that, and we tried to go through a process, and it just didn't work out the way that we felt like it needed to. In this particular case, again, I would be in favor of going through that surplus process in order for basically potentially Riverton to take ownership of it and full responsibility for it. Again, looking at an option of, again, preserving that potential future connection of that easement and that right of way.
I have to ask the question, though, what's different about this property process versus the property in Bluffdale process? I mean, we have a piece of surplus property that we're not going to use, we don't have any intention of using, that is really not of utility to us nor to the other city, and we wanted to sell it to them for what we felt was a fair market value. But now it's in Riverton, we wouldn't go through the same process. That doesn't seem a consistent.
There is
If I
one-
remember
The
correctly
difference
on
for
that,
me, sorry, David, I'll just say that the difference for me is for me, we were talking about this one's an existing roadway and a potential connection. And that's how I distinguish between the two.
But the problem is where it terminates here is the same exact issue as the other places. There's an existing road that terminates right there, and there's a desire to build a road on the other side from Wasatch. They want to build a road there. They definitely want to build a road there. There's still a process to be done there. But here, I don't necessarily see a distinction. There's want to connect a road across the canal. There's a surplus property there. I'm not sure why we wouldn't go through the same process.
so if I remember,
Because my feeling is that if we're just willing to give this away, then we should be willing to give away the other property as well.
so if
But
I,
if we're going to sell the other property, I think we have to go through the process of appraising and determining a fair market value for this as well.
to answer your question, Steve, if I remember correctly, it was relayed to us that Bluffdale was insistent that they pay us for that particular piece of land. That was
I
the
don't
way it was
recall
relayed
that,
to
but-
us, was that Bluffdale wanted to make sure that it was all, that they truly own it, that there was no favors involved, that it was all, because that's the way, or at least it was relayed to me in this meeting, was that Bluffdale was like, no, we're gonna get it appraised, we're gonna pay it this way because we don't want there to be any favors, we don't want there to be any back and forth on this. We're just gonna pay for this property, we're done.
And it had to do with making that connection.
Exactly.
Jared, you had a comment with Mayor Timothy about this. What do you recall what the circumstances about that were? Kind of makes the same
Agree.
problem we've experiencing. Yeah.
I have another, just a quick comment, because I think it's really important to note this. You do not know why we got this from Rosecrest. So to assume that we got this as just a freebie, I think is probably maybe too far on a limb for me, because there's been a lot of dealings with Rosecrest. So even though they're like, well, we were just getting rid of surplus property, do you know what I'm saying? I think that we should just not assume that we just got this for a freebie, because I don't know any relationships that we've had with developers that they just give us freebies. So I think that we should be very cautious in thinking that this is just because of a freebie. This is probably something long owed or something like that, that
Fair point.
this property's been put in to our name.
I haven't found anything that there was any transaction on this, so.
Yeah, and nothing, I believe you, that, but you know what I mean? It's just like, there's history
Yeah.
that
And
that
I think
outdates
the only
both of
thing,
us.
the only thing that's safe to say is we didn't pay any money for it.
That we know how, we didn't write them a check when they deeded that to us. That's correct. But we may have given a trade somewhere along the line, and it was just something that they
Part
took
of
a
another
while.
agreement, right? that-
Yeah, and it took them a while to get it off their books. I have no idea.
So I think going back to the question about the process and what we did with another jurisdiction, I think our SOP and our ordinance really directs us pretty clear on what to do. We go out, we figure out the value, and then you guys decide what you want to do. And I think if you want to always be consistent with selling for whatever the appraised value is, I think it'll shake out in that, because an existing road will appraise with a certain discount of 90% discount or 95%. An easement will be like 70%, somewhere there typically. I think the difference with the piece in Bluffdale was it was a raw piece of ground that they could have gotten and abandoned and developed into quarter-acre lots or townhomes or anything. There was a lot of value still potential in that property.
In that
So-
property, yeah.
So then that would shake out, obviously, in an appraisal, because you could say, oh,
Yeah.
you got a general plan, you got undeveloped property, you got potential here. So then your discount is zero. You're paying full freight at that point. So
Understood.
I think if you follow.
That was the point I was
SOP
trying to make, but didn't, but Blake just made it for me. My opinion would be we go through the surplus process and follow the policy.
I would like to see an appraisal on this. Since we know we have it, we should probably know how much it's worth. But specifically, with the appraisal, knowing that we would intend to put a right-of-way easement on any property that we surplus in this piece, on either the Bluffdale or the Riverton side, unless the council disagrees with me. I think that regardless of what we do, any appraisal needs to have that right-of-way component easement in it, because I don't have any intention of voting to get rid of this unless that easement is there.
Okay.
So,
Just
I don't disagree.
for quick reference, for it to come up to the $250,000 mark to be a significant piece of property based on our ordinance definition, it'd have to be $4.82 per square foot. In comparison, the UDOT pieces that we've been looking at that are like detention basins and things like that are coming back at about $2 a square foot. So we're probably pretty close to that $2 range. So we'll be at least half or maybe less than half of what the $250,000 mark is. Just to keep in mind, so.
Right.
okay.
Okay.
Does that give you the direction that you need to move forward
Think
with the
so.
appraisal?
We're gonna go get an appraisal. We'll come back and we'll apprise
easement.
Riverton of the situation and where we're at. And so their political leadership might be reaching out to you guys just to get some, I don't know, coordination effort on that.
Love these really quick, simple 30-minute conversations.
Super simple. All right, we will move on to item 2.2, budget calendar overview for 2020, 2021. Alan, online with us?
Oh.
April.
Uh, Thank you for that, Alan. I do have a quick question, and maybe this is an update for a future meeting, Wendy. I know that we had projected some additional staff in our last budget, and then we held off on hiring some of those staff because we were concerned about the city's finances during the COVID pandemic. I think the city has done a really good job of handling that. We've been in a good financial place. We haven't seen quite the impacts of other cities. Can you please, in a future meeting, give us an update on what's going on with those personnel, unless you already know?
Yeah, we'd be happy to. We still have everything pretty much on hold for now, just until we get a better feeling of what we're going to be looking at. Alan's keeping a really close eye on that.
Yeah, if we can get an update on that, because and just see where we are, because I mean, we said we were going to hold off maybe 6 months or so. We're 6 months into our budget now. We probably need to have that discussion again as to what we want to do with that. So if we could just put that on a future agenda, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Alan. Okay, are there any further questions for our finance director? If not, we will move on to item 2.3, Harriman City website presentation. Tammy and Jonathan.
Okay, well, thank you. Last year, council approved budget to design a new website that would accommodate for the growing expectations of our residents. As more and more people become digitally savvy, it's important to have a website that will connect with the digital culture that reshapes our communities. And I think you'll see that with this new website, it is definitely more aesthetically pleasing, it is user-friendly, and it also has accommodations for those with different abilities. Through this website and through the design process, we were actually able to eliminate some of the contracts that we had that needed to coincide with our old website, which has led to a significant savings for the city. So I'm going to turn the time over to John, and he's going to take you through this new website and show you what it will look like when it rolls out in January.
All right, so we'll show you a few highlights. There are a lot of neat features to this site, as Tammy mentioned. It's more aesthetically pleasing. So this is our current site, which works, but it's as time goes on, it gets a little clunky, and it's time for an upgrade and update. So this is the new homepage. Let me give it one quick refresh. So different color scheme, different layout. We have just a few tabs up top. Accessible to people who aren't popular. We haven't launched the site yet. We have several ways to link to the same thing. Tabs, but presented. I hope this will be easily accessible. Going down here, we have the latest news scroll bar, which latest news up here, and it works, but this is a little bit more modernized. Calendar feature. This one is nice, both aesthetically and for our current site.
None of us are in it, so that is very aesthetically pleasing. Thank you. None of us are in that picture, so it is very aesthetically pleasing. Thank you.
Area.
Yeah, I can hear you.
1 moment, please. I can't count on this staying on. All right, sorry about that. Hopefully you can hear me now. On our current site, we need to go in and manually update each of these individual events as they show up on the main page. This, under this one, it'll be done automatically, and it'll expire. These particular items will expire once they happen, so we don't ever get, in fact, there's a good example of this right here. We have a planning commission meeting from last week that happens to still be on there, and that happens sometimes. We try to stay on top of it, but when it's not automated, that becomes an issue. So people can scroll through the next coming week's items and kind of see what's going on. As Tammy mentioned, we are making a big effort to make this accessible and user-friendly to those with disabilities. I'm actually not sure. There's the icon. On the bottom right of the screen, there's an accessibility icon that people can click, and this program will adapt the website as the viewers see it, depending on different disabilities. So they can select different things here, and it doesn't change the website, but it changes how they see it. And then you have screen reader options for those who are deaf. And what's nice about this program is, as you can see, this is down the bottom right, but if you're using a screen reader, excuse me, I said deaf, I meant blind. If you're using a screen reader, it's designed to go to this right away, so they don't have to just kind of browse and. So that's a nice feature. It rescans our website every 24 hours to update for the content. So that will be a nice feature. Down here, more links to the kind of same things, again, just presented a different way. Try to make it clean, simple, easy to use. Mission statement down here, contact us options, kind of standard, and then a Google map to the city hall. So that is, one more feature on the home page. An emergency alert option, if the need arises, we have the option to show an emergency alert up here. It's pretty flexible if we need to include an image. For example, we had the police situation a few years ago where there was a manhunt going on for a little while. We showed the picture on the main page. We can do that right here, really easy. And this is flexible and can display a lot of various ways. Moving on, I'll show you some of the inside pages, give you a look. We'll start with the trails one that we mentioned earlier. So this is kind of an example of what the inside pages look like. I actually didn't realize the emergency alert would go on all the pages. That's good to know.
Upgrade.
Right? So clean look. We try to have big, easy to see, easy to use buttons to find the content people want to see. Here's an example for our trails guide that we published late spring this year. It's taken a bit to load. Anyway, so try to make things easy to find, intuitive. We're trying to put an emphasis on interactive maps. So this is an example of our interactive trails map that our GIS team has helped us put together. You can click on various trails and see information come up about those. We also have an interactive parks map that's in progress, where people can click on the various parks and get the park name, the address, a picture, a link to the park page on the website. We were thinking that that's probably the easiest way to present it to people, where they can find things geographically, find where they live, and so forth. Going on to just try the economic development page.
Jonathan, can I ask one question, interrupt you real quick? You can go back to that previous page for just a sec.
Sure.
As I'm looking at this, my question is this zoomed in, or is this going to be the actual size that's going to adapt to different screens in this same proportion?
This one might be a little zoomed in.
The reason I just wanted to ask is, the way it was appearing, it didn't look like it would be intuitively encouraging people to scroll down for more information. It just, each one of those things was taking up the whole screen, so I just wanted to verify that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, so it just depends on how zoomed in the user is. That it looked like we were pretty far zoomed in.
Understood, thank you.
Look at the economic development page. Again, similar information to what we have on our current site. A little more updated, a little more aesthetically friendly. Some information here. Links to other pages. I do like this navigation bar on the left side. You can see pages and sub-pages as they're clicked on, easy to navigate. Another cool feature we like that we're using on this new site is demographics information. Our economic development team has been working to get this available. So easily or nicely presented, a lot of various types of information. So we're trying to make things like this easy to access. Lots of information available very quickly. We can look at the city council database. So right now, if we are looking for agendas and packets, we go to the city council page. You have to click this tab for agendas, this tab for audio, this for packets, and so forth for the same meeting. Here we're consolidating each of them into, each meeting has their own individual page. So for tonight's meeting, you go here, see the agenda, packet, audio when it comes available, minutes. We'll have a recap on here as it becomes written. Just have everything in one easy to find place. The calendar on the homepage will link straight to this for the city council and planning commission meetings. Try to make that easier to find, easier to use. Wrapping up here, as Tammy mentioned, we were able to eliminate some contracts, one of which was our mass text and email blast system. This platform will include that, which is really nice. Saves a significant amount of money, and it makes things a lot easier. The website integrates nicely with.
Will residents need to re-sign up for that with a new
sorry?
number? Are residents going to need to re-sign up for that program with a new
So
number?
we're able to download the list of subscribers from our current provider and re-upload it to. the
Awesome,
new
that's
platform.
fantastic.
So they'll have a different phone number that it's coming from, but they don't have to do anything on their end. And then last thing, our IT department has been leading out on a huge project with Wendia. That is still in process, but we're working with them to integrate this website with Wendia to make it easy to use for both city staff and residents. It'll have a similar look as you go back and forth between the two, and hopefully it'll clean up a lot of processes and a lot of users' time.
So with this, amazing, looks great, super excited. How much testing has gone on to make sure that it runs well on mobile? I know that our current website with the large graphic on that first page sometimes causes some real slowdowns. How does this interact with, because I'm sure a large percentage of our residents are going to interact with this on a mobile device. So how well is that working?
That's one of the big selling points with the provider that is hosting this platform is they make a major effort to make things very clean on the mobile front, as clean as an app would. There will always be some scrolling because as a government website, we have a lot of options, a lot of things to do, but it should be very user-friendly, very clean on the mobile side of things.
The
As I've been
scrolling's
testing it so
fine.
far-
It was more of a loading issue on the other website where it wouldn't load because there was just too much graphic coming through on a database or something. So
Yeah, and the way our current site is hosted, it's a little clunky and a little slow. This one is significantly faster.
Beautiful.
So It should be a nice change for all of us. We're anticipating to have this launched live by the new year. We have still some work to do, and we have some content finalizing to do with other city departments, but hopefully the next few weeks we'll be ready to move on this.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Nice work.
We always appreciate the effort our staff puts into making sure our residents can communicate effectively with us.
Are we sold on the plum? Are we sold on this? The plum?
One thing I do want to mention is, even with all of these additional features that this website has, we actually were still able to come in under what we budgeted for the website. And then we were also able to cancel one of our contracts that was $30,000 a year. So there is really a significant savings to this new website, in spite of the fact that it has more advanced features.
Good job.
That's a really good answer. Well done.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We will move on to item
Like that.
2.4, discussion pertaining to an interlocal agreement with Salt Lake County for a traffic signal at 131 South, 6400 West. Jonathan.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
We have another interlocal agreement with the county, and I thought what I would do is not just talk about the interlocal, but perhaps we can talk just a little bit about an update on the project in general, which I thought might be helpful. Councilmember Steve Shields isn't here to see this, but he'd be proud. I got myself a vicinity map right there is the area I'm talking about. So this is the intersection of 6400 West, right, and Main Street. We all know about this intersection. We all know it needs to be improved, right?
Yes,
now-
very soon.
Yes. Giving just a little bit of background on the nature and the dynamics of this project. Prior to our ability to install a traffic signal, there's a significant amount of utilities and roadway expansion just in that area alone that need to happen for us to simply put the footprints of these masts for the traffic signal down. As you know, there was right-of-way acquisition that was required and completed. You can kind of see that faded back a little bit. That has been done and completed. So we have property ready to move forward. Now, also backing up, these improvements here are somewhat, I would say, I don't want to call them small in nature, but they're very localized geographically. But we are considering currently adding these improvements that I'm talking about in preparation to the signal, adding those improvements to a very large waterline project along 6400 West that would extend all the way north to 118th South, and then along 108. And Justin spoke to this improvement a while ago. So we're thinking about having them be part of the same project. At this point, we actually anticipate going that direction. I don't see a change in that, but there's a possibility it could change. Now, as we know, so we've procured a consultant for this project, and there's not just the signal that needs to be done, right? That was the eminent improvement that needs to be done, but there's all legs of that intersection except for the north that need to be improved. And so we have a consultant on board that's has started that design, got us to the 60% level, and we've told them to hang on there until we have funding for a future. We take that to 100% when it becomes time, and we'll have that time. We'll actually come to you in the future. Sounds like, from what Alan was saying, sometime in March to talk about future improvements there. And I thought I would just include this slide just to snip it right out of the plans. You show that little gray area in that traffic signal. I thought I would just show these are the essential,
Can you do me a favor real quick? Can you go back to the vicinity map?
What's that?
Can you go back to the vicinity map? I just want to make sure that Councilman Shields gets a chance to
Councilmember
see
Shields,
it.
you'd be proud. Look at this.
I am proud. I love this.
All right, you can go back, sorry.
Mayor, you
Okay.
really messed up my plan, because I was gonna, as soon as Steve came back, I was gonna say, Steve, it's glad you weren't here for the start of this, because there was no vicinity.
There was Thanks, Mayor. Mayor's got my back. Okay. So these gray areas here kind of show what asphalt's needed for that traffic signal. And just to catch you up quickly to speed, Councilmember Shields, really there's a lot of improvements that need to get done prior to this signal coming in So I just explained that just a little bit. So as you can kind of see, in this, I didn't show the plans for all the utility relocation. That map is actually required to be larger. The extents of the utility relocations are quite extensive just for the traffic signal, and that does also include undergrounding, power, and other communications.
It looks like it significantly impacts our own building right there too. That has to be relocated or moved a little bit.
Which part, Sherry?
So the water, I think it's a water building.
Yeah, sorry, what?
The line was right through the building, on the edge of it.
Yeah, so the water line, so are you talking about the new water line or the existing?
Back up one. See how that white line just cuts off the corner of our building there?
Yeah.
So do we have to relocate that building?
You're talking about the pump station? Yeah. Yeah, so the mast is just a bit north of that line, that white line. So we're clear there at least. Good question.
How close is that? Is that going to cause a problem with site distance? I mean, I know that's the engineer's jobs, but is that going to cause a problem with site distance or anything on that corner?
I think that's why it's going so wide.
That would make sense.
Yeah, it's at least not for this analysis. I wish I actually showed the snippet of what, there is an existing site distance issue that exists today.
Yes.
To your point. But our ability to get us that site distance completely without the complete improvements of each leg of the intersection would not be completely mitigated until that time.
Okay. But eventually.
True, yes. All right. So the anticipated schedule is we're going to go ahead and bid beginning of next year. And then we'll work on, so there's two large portions of this project. The first is the intersection improvements, which we anticipate to be completed around the end of springtime for these intersection improvements. And that, again, that will follow the waterline project. The county, if we sign this interlocal agreement, the county then would come in right on the heels of the completion of those improvements and install them. I put the month of July. I'm sandbagging that just a little bit because I'm hoping that we can come sooner. So, and I spoke with the county, they're on board with the time frame that we give them.
Blake should have, don't sandbag, just tell us it's gonna be July, maybe August. And then when you come in June, we're surprised. Now you told us you already sandbagged, we're gonna be pushing for June.
So what I meant to say, the bottom point here is December 2021.
There you go.
We're doing so well with the vicinity map, and then no, it says it right here. See, complete prior to December 2021. He's right on it.
I'm learning a lot today.
I like that one, gives me a whole year before.
That's right.
Thank you for letting us give you a hard time.
That's right. Oh no, I'm just throwing out all my cards. Okay. So what I'm trying to do, at least at this point, is outlining essentially what is in that agreement. And so in that agreement, it specifies these items in there specifically for that contract cost of $209,300. Again, it does have the contract showing December 2021, but obviously we're going to be pushing that to be as soon as we're done with our improvements with the roadway improvements. So anyway, that is everything that I've prepared on my presentation. Are there any questions that you might have?
No.
The only question I had, and not really a question, but just to, I guess, confirm what was in there is, I mean, you did obviously throw in the option of, trying to go out to bid.
Yes.
And not do the interlocal with Salt Lake County. But in your assessment, we weren't going to save any time or money by going that route.
We certainly wouldn't save time. The money, historically with Harriman City, we have actually typically used Salt Lake County, and in touching base with other cities, for those who do go out to a public bid for private contractors, they found the prices to be comparable, so we would anticipate that to be the case. So that's a good point. The thing that should be noted, and is in the staff report, but is good to mention and iterate, is that if we did need to go out for a public bid for private contractors, we would need to probably spend some additional funds to be able to get those plans and bid documents prepared.
Gotcha.
And so this isn't on for decision. This is kind of a pricing interlocal, trying to get a temperature here on what the council's thoughts are, and then come back later.
How quickly can we have this back to us?
Next council meeting.
January.
January?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm supportive of moving forward and getting the interlocal in place.
I mean, I am as well, yeah. So it looks like you have our support on that. Just for the residents who are not aware, whenever we put in a stoplight, we are very careful about that. But with this particular stoplight, this is Main Street, which goes out and turns into U-111, which has some pretty substantial traffic, some larger vehicles coming from Kennecott. And so this is a pretty rough intersection where we don't have the ability to turn. It's extremely bad. It's one of the worst in the city probably as far as the need for a traffic signal. So this is, while it might slow a few people down on their way into work, it's definitely going to be a huge improvement on safety.
Absolutely.
Mayor and council, would you like this back for discussion or added to the consent agenda for that meeting?
I'm good with consent.
Consent, yeah.
Agreed.
That is a great question, Wendy. Thank you.
Is speeding
I like where your head's at. I like where your head's at, Wendy.
Do you have any other feedback or direction you need from us?
Oh, I heard what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much.
December 2021, right?
That's what he heard.
All right. Discussion of a zoning map amendment request. Sorry, we're on to item 2.5. Discussion of a zoning map amendment requested by Joe Darger, applicant, on behalf of Joe Darger and Travis Kelsch. If I said that correctly, I apologize if I got that wrong. Property owners for 4.99 acres of property comprised of parcels. 3 parcels located approximately 13504-13508 south, 7530 west, from 1A agriculture to sorry, I can't talk today. This is a long one. From A1 agriculture 1 acre minimum to A.25 agriculture 10,000 square foot minimum. Michael.
Thank you and good evening. This application was initiated in September. In addition to the rezoning application, there is also a pending subdivision application that is before the Planning Commission, awaiting the result of this decision. As you know, tonight, this is just a briefing for the City Council, and we anticipate having this scheduled for a future council meeting for action, possibly January 13th. Here's the outline of this project. We, again, had a neighborhood meeting in November, followed by a public hearing notice that was mailed to property owners within the vicinity. Planning Commission did make a positive recommendation for approval. This is the vicinity map showing the location of the property, and a little closer, just showing that the property is partially developed. You can see this largely vacant property to the north that would be potentially part of a future subdivision. The property is zoned A1, as was mentioned by the mayor, and you can see it's surrounded on 3 sides by 8.25, which is the same zoning designation that is being requested. This is on the boundary of the city with the unincorporated county to the west. The general plan identifies this property as agricultural residential, and the zoning request is consistent with the general plan as far as the density is concerned. Again, this is the area, the photograph of the property. This is the conceptual subdivision plan. Again, this is subject to change based on engineering and other input from the Planning Commission and the community. So it's just a concept showing what could potentially happen if this amendment were approved.
How many lots is that total? 18?
Looks like they've labeled, yes, I think that is the total in this scenario.
As I'm just looking at this, I'm seeing seeing lots that don't have.
Right,
Is that
and again, this
private
is just
drive?
conceptual. This is just a
Oh, yeah,
conceptual
okay,
plan,
there's
yeah. We did receive a favorable report from the neighborhood meeting. We had 1 public comment that was opposed during the Planning Commission public hearing. There was a concern that the development pattern was different or might yield smaller lots than what is adjoining the property. There are some larger lots in the neighborhood, but the 8.25, as you can see, is actually, that is what the rest of the neighborhood is zoned, and it is fairly consistent. One thing I mentioned in the staff report, it is often the case that the commission would have a zoning condition that would require larger lots that abut the county in this area. And for whatever reason, the commission did not include a zoning condition. I think maybe it was just an oversight. It was mentioned in the staff report, but it was not part of their motion to recommend approval. But it is something that the commission or the council could consider for future action when this is before you again.
Yeah, I agree, and I actually spoke with Mr. Darter about that, and I believe his intent is to do exactly that. I know that when we're doing all the, developing that whole area out there, anything along the border with High Country was supposed to be half-acre lots.
Right.
And his intent is to be consistent with.
And that's been a matter of just policy. We've been consistent on that in the past, and
Yeah, but I do believe that, his intent is that, but I do believe that there should also be a zoning condition on that.
Do you have a image of the general plan in that area?
yes, again, this light colored, this yellow, this is the general plan, all agricultural residential.
Sherry, thanks for speaking with the applicant on that, because that was something that I noted in the staff report as well. And certainly, having served on the planning commission for some time, that has been the practice and intended to be the long-term practice in that area, so appreciate that.
So I'm sorry, just, go ahead, Jared.
Right, this is,
I share that concern, Jared.
I don't understand what you mean.
This map is not consistent what might have been approved other places.
Layout than what the rest of the subdivisions look like.
It
What-
kind of depends. The other ones, we're done with larger subdivisions, and actually, some of the lots east of him are smaller than this because we allowed them a bunch of bonus density.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges
Density
too.
bonuses.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges too is obviously they're trying to preserve some existing homes in the area and
Yeah.
integrate them into there. But that's certainly something that, that can be worked out through the engineering process and the subdivision process as they move forward.
Sure, and I'll tell you, we'll be speaking about this next week too on the flag lot thing, but there is a better conceptual plan on this, and I'll share that with you all in the next few days through an email, allowing a couple of flag lots that make the subdivision look way better than this
interesting.
does.
Okay.
So that's why, part of the reason I thought we needed to revisit the flag lot issue was to say, look, this makes more sense if we do it this way. It utilizes the property better, and it allows the traffic flow better, so. Anyway.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to item 2.6, Jordan, well, let's see here. Yeah, 2.6, Jordan School District boundary changes and safe walking route discussion. Blake. And just so that the council is aware, we do have our school board member here in the back, Darrell Robinson. It's good to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for pointing that out. I was going to do so. I invited Mr. Robinson here in case you had any questions, because this is a recent decision that was made by the Jordan School District School Board. And so this item I'm bringing to you tonight, the school district is preparing to open a couple of new schools over the next couple of years. And so they had a board meeting a couple weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, where they adopted some new boundaries. And so Mr. Robinson reached out to I think, Councilman Henderson, and then he forwarded the message on to us. So Harriman Police Department and Engineering Department worked together with the school board to come up with a little bit, I don't know, just collaborate on the plan to make sure we had a good plan with the boundary changes, because as you know, they affect the safe walk routes. So the first slide is our vicinity map again. And so this shows the location of the new school. So the first school is Daybreak Village 8 Elementary. They don't have it named yet, but it's under construction, scheduled to open August 2021. And then the next one is the Hidden Oaks or Danzy Elementary School, and it also doesn't have a name yet, and it's scheduled to open a year later in 2022. So they had an interesting task ahead of them, the school board did, putting together boundary changes to contemplate 1 year and the next year. And it's really kind of cool what they're doing, because they've identified the boundary for these two schools, and especially the Danzy one, because the school's not even constructed yet. So you'll have people moving into the neighborhood that will be able to, feel like they have a lot of ownership in this school, because they'll help name it, they'll help pick certain things out. with the school. So that's a pretty cool, pretty cool feature. They'll know where they're going before the school's even there. So this is the existing boundary map, and what I kind of want to point out is if you look, it's color-coded. The Bastion Elementary boundary is enormous, but it's because when it was created, it contained a lot of undeveloped ground. Ground's developing rapidly, not only in Harriman, but in South Jordan. And so Bastion School is exceeded capacity, and this new school in Daybreak is very much needed. So, and then some other key points, the Butterfield Canyon, we're hoping to offload some of the demand there because that school has historically had high numbers. And let's see, what else? The one thing I want to point out is when we first started talking to the board, their task is always to try to balance the student numbers out. And it was really great of Daryl to call us up and coordinate, because the whole other aspect of that is, maybe they just circle one neighborhood and send it to a new school. And we start looking at it, and I know Chief Carr brought up a concern. We were going to send students from one neighborhood across 5600 West near the Chevron, where they right now go to Silvercrest. And we were like, we don't want to cross students there. That's a skewed intersection. It's busy. They already go to Silvercrest. Is there any way we can do to keep them there? And the option that was chosen did that. So we appreciate working with the school board, and we've kind of come to an agreement that we'll be able to get together and meet on this kind of stuff in the future when we do boundary changes. So the first one I wanted to talk about was Daybreak Village 8, and I'll just hit some high points here. If you're aware of the Rushmore Townhomes, they're over by the JCWs, the kind of the northwest or northeast corner of Harriman. They were, in a couple of the plans, were scheduled to go over to Daybreak Village 8. The school board decided to keep them at Bastion Elementary. We have a crossing guard at Freedom Park Drive, and so that crossing guard will remain. But if you notice, the Farmgate and Timbergate apartments, they are carved out and now going to the elementary school in Daybreak.
So they'll have to cross 118.
They will have to cross 118. There's already a crossing that I believe we share. Is that right, Cody? Do we share at Freedom Park and 118? Yeah, so I think we have one already that crosses there. We share with South Jordan.
I know.
The one thing that HPD has pointed out is with the new charter school that's up on 118th and this Daybreak Village 8, and as we're building the homes in Teton Village, which is pretty close to, well, you can see where where Harriman High School is, just west of there. That's going to accelerate the need for a traffic signal at 6400 West and 118th, because kids are going to be crossing there. And so we're going to be looking at the options for putting that signal in, timing on it. And that's a signal that'll be shared with South Jordan. So the cost that you just saw that Jonathan gave, it's probably a little bit less expensive signal than that, just because it's not on such an interesting intersection. It's a little more planned out, but it's also shared cost between us and South Jordan. So it'll just be halved on that. One other thing to point out on this one is the Lafayette subdivision. They will have the option to move to Bastion or go to Silvercrest this next year, and then the next year they'll all go to Bastion. And so they get the option of when they can move. And then I already talked about the signal at 6400 West. Are there any questions before I move on from the Daybreak Village 8? Okay. No, I guess I had circles. I forgot about that. They weren't showing on my thing here. So, yep, those are all the items I wanted to talk about, so I got them. Good. Maybe I got circles on this one too. I do, so I'll remember them. So this is the Hidden Oaks boundary. And so a couple of things to point out. I talked about, there's the location of the school, and that's going to start construction early next year. We've been working really close with Ivory Homes, and things are moving really fast up there with them, and so that's happening. This is the neighborhood right here, the Harriman Village neighborhood that we talked about carving out and going to a different location. That one will remain at Silvercrest Elementary instead of going to Harriman Elementary. And then the other area is the Rose Basin area. That whole portion that I've circled there will be going to the new Danzy School. So it will take a lot of pressure off of McHouston. The walking route down there will only service the people that live along McHouston. There will be no one on the west side of McHouston that will walk down McHouston anymore. And so that's just the update I wanted to give you on that.
The problem is now they're gonna walk down 7,300, which is still a mess too.
So
Hey, Sherry, stay in your lane, please, stay in your lane.
one thing to point out here is, if you look at this, if they do walk, this will put them walking down the south side of Harriman Highway. And I went and looked at the right-of-way width, and it's pretty narrow in a few places. And that's the portion of Harriman Highway that isn't there's no plans for development along there currently. And so as we're putting together our legislative priorities for road funding, this is 6,000 West and Harriman Highway both become pushed up the list because of these school boundaries and things. And so we're working on that. We're searching for outside funding opportunities to at least get some type of pathway for the students to walk down this road. We hope to have Ivory Homes construct Harriman Highway going out to 6900 West, which is about if you're familiar with where the Danzys had their hay shed still standing for at least another week or so, that's about where that road goes in.
Well, and right there where that little indentation is, that is so dangerous right there.
Yeah, that's my concern
Yeah,
is,
that little corner right there.
Where the
is-
Jersey barriers are
Yeah.
located by the power pole there.
That would not be good to have kids walking along there.
Yeah, so we're searching out some opportunities, and we met and talked, and as we keep working with HPD, we'll figure out some solutions to some of these problems.
so my question would then be I know that the decision's kind of already made, but my concern there is the safety that we're now having, particularly on that new elementary school, having quite a few what appear to be potentially quite dangerous interactions between vehicles and child pedestrians. And that's where my biggest concern on all of this is where, as I'm trying to look at, right away and how many of these students are going to have to cross Harriman Highway, which we can't get, even with speed limit signs, we can't get people to stay at the 35 miles an hour it's supposed to be at. I'm concerned that, we're going to have a pretty dangerous situation here on that specific road. That's my biggest concern, and I'd be looking to staff to see how we could engineer that, and, police to see how we could enforce that, to make sure that we don't. I'm just terrified that we're going to have kids anywhere near Harriman Highway, let alone, crossing it or walking down it to get to school. You're fine, Chief.
6 feet?
Right? To reiterate a little bit about what Blake said is, yes, the Jordan School District invited us to have a conversation about it. My frustration with all of this, and I probably won't paint as rosy a picture, is that boundaries are changed for numbers, and I'm in the business of safety, and those two compete, right? So when we were talking about this one specifically, I have a very significant concern about kids getting anywhere near the Harriman Highway, right? And I truly think it has to be an engineered fix where we have some sort of barrier, physical barrier, and I don't know how that's going to work because it is thin in some areas. So I don't know. But at this point, we're really trying to weed our way through this and see where we're going to end up with it. But that was my greatest concern, is moving those kids out onto that highway and having them just at the end of the day, anywhere near.
Yeah.
So,
I guess on the positive side is we're aware of the issue and we have some time to work on a good fix.
right, and Daryl was kind enough, as we started to work through this, he brought it to the board's attention that, listen, we make changes that dramatically impact cities. Our budget for crossing guards, as you know, is in excess of $300,000. Can't be that. We have to figure out a way to work our way through that, and we're falling back to policies and other things to make sure that we're driven by analytics and statistics when we put crossing guards on. So it was a very positive interaction, and Daryl, thank you again, by the way, for taking it to the board and making them aware that, hey, as we make changes, it impacts other people. So while having students equalized in schools is an important thing, getting them there and home is of greater importance to me. So.
And we have always appreciated your and every single one of our officers' commitments to that. We know that that is by far your top priority, and we're grateful to have you guys as part of that conversation. Grateful to the school district for making sure you're part of that conversation from the get-go.
Sorry,
So.
I'll move back.
Mostly, a lot of this conversation is to make sure that our school board member is hearing us say it, because that's our biggest concern, and we want to make sure that you have that backup as well.
So, yeah, the one thing to point out is, and Clint, you said it, we've got some time here. So we're going to go through and identify some things. I know there's some developments that are coming in that are going to come all the way up to 7300 West, a little bit north of Harriman Highway, but maybe we can find a strategic place to cross with a new signal or something and get them off of Harriman Highway, and we're walking through a neighborhood or something. So there's a lot of opportunities, windows opening for this, so we'll keep working with the developer. And that's the other thing we have is a really workable developer we're working with up here. The school's in the middle of their neighborhood. And they're interested and they're invested in it as well. Okay.
Thank you.
right.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Blake.
Great. Thank
Keep
you.
at it. Glad you guys are on top of what are the obvious concerns and there's communication about how to fix it. So that's the best place to be at right now. Thank you.
Okay.
With that, we have come to the end of our work meeting agenda. I will accept a motion to adjourn our work meeting, take a short break, and then move into our general meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will begin our general meeting at 7:10 on the dot. All right, I would like to welcome everybody out to our city council general meeting, our general meeting for the Harriman City Council for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. We will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be offered to us by the Harriman royalty.
After me.
Thank you very much for your participation. We appreciate that. We'll move on to item 4.2, City Council comments and recognitions.
I'll just take a quick moment and again, just give a shout out to our awesome Harriman City staff and everything they do to help in a difficult time of pandemic to continue to come up with innovative ways and activities to engage the community. The mobile laser light show parade last week, traditionally we're able to invite the community out here to Crane Park for the lighting of the park and celebrate that to really kind of the kickoff to the holiday season together. And obviously that wasn't a possibility this year, but our staff, again, didn't let that stop them in really taking the fun to them. And so no small feat, again, to really come up with an idea to make it materialize and do something that was still very fun and meaningful for the kids, especially in our city, to be able to recognize that even though we have these limitations in place that we're not used to, that this is still a time to be happy, to celebrate and to be out and about. So just thanks to our awesome staff. Please, Wendy, make sure that they're all aware of that they do incredible things under challenging circumstances.
Thank you. It was definitely a group effort. HPD was instrumental on helping us put that together, as well as UFA. And I think we've created another event for ourselves. So we've been asked to continue this event for next year.
Yeah, be careful how well you do some things.
So we're going to do the drive-through graduations again next year too. So, okay, I got it.
We hope so. We hope so. That was fun.
That's so good.
Real quick, before we move on, move to any more of those recognitions, it seems like we might be having a slight technical difficulty. I'm hearing that our council member, Jared Henderson, is online, but he is not getting any audio. Jared, can you hear us? Okay. Jared, can you hear us now? Awesome. Sorry about that. The recording has been recording. I apologize that you weren't able to hear it on that broadcast. So that is back up and running. Back to City Council comments and recognitions.
I have one here. We received a letter and a nice plaque here from Mayor Mendenhall from Salt Lake City with a letter. I'll go ahead and read it, dated November 30th. It says, "Dear Harriman City, when our valley was hit hard by the hurricane-force windstorm in early September, you responded to Salt Lake City's call for assistance, making a difference in the lives of those who live and work here. I dearly appreciate the help and expertise your agency provided as our residents face significant property damage, impassable roads and sidewalks, and prolonged power outages. As our own teams worked weekends and around the clock, we were able to rely on many outside professional teams, including yours, who helped expedite the strenuous, significant cleanup we were tasked with. Our crews have expressed how much having that extra people power was a boost for morale and served to energize them. On behalf of all of Salt Lake City, thank you so much for going out of your way to help. Sincerely, Aaron Mendenhall, Salt Lake City Mayor." And took a piece of a tree here, and it says, "In appreciation of Harriman 2020 Salt Lake City Windstorm Emergency Response." So we'll find a nice place for that and get that displayed, but I thought that was very nice. Just one other comment. I really love the city of Harriman. There are so many generous and caring people in our community. COVID sucks. We're all tired of it. We're tired of masks. We're tired of rules. We're tired of all of it. And I know we are. It's impacting our kids, our relationships, our routines. And it's impacting our holidays a little bit. But last night I got to participate in something really cool in my neighborhood. Couldn't get kids together for a Christmas party. Couldn't doing some of the things that have historically been done up there. And so the neighborhood organized a neighborhood Christmas parade and put together some flatbed trucks and some things. And we had some carolers and hot chocolate and Santa Claus up on a trailer passing out some things to the kids. And we had a nativity scene with a donkey and some goats. And it was just awesome. It really helped kind of bring that Christmas spirit for many people up there in that neighborhood. And I just have heard lots of stories about the creativity and energy that's gone into kind of telling COVID to go stick it, we're still going to have Christmas. So I just love the city we live in. I'm proud of our residents for their creativity, for their energy, for their willingness to continue to do what it takes to have a great Christmas spirit in our community. So I thank everybody, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas.
All right, Jared, do you have anything? Okay. I did want to just point out, it looks like we have people out at the ice rink already this year. I want to express my appreciation to staff for having that up and running so that there's another outdoor amenity that our residents can enjoy, keeping in mind that those numbers will be limited due to the current circumstance, but we still encourage our residents to take advantage of that amenity that we do have just outside Harriman City Hall. It's a fantastic amenity. We continue to enjoy year after year. So good job on staff for having that up and running. And we appreciate all that staff does to provide those opportunities for our residents during these rougher times where we're stuck at home with with the people we love most dear. So thank you very much. We will move on to item 5, which is public comment. Before I move on to that, I do want to just let the members of the audience know that for those who are here for item 9.2, discussion and consideration of an ordinance for the Val Johnson, the Valhalla subdivision, we have already closed the public hearing on that. So there will be no opportunity for residents to speak at that item. So if you would like to speak to that item, the opportunity to speak at that item will be now during the public comment portion of our meeting. Let me read the notes on here real quick. Audience members may bring any item to the council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comment for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing a city council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@harriman.org or by visiting harriman.org/agenda and minutes, where there will be a link to join the electronic meeting to submit a comment. Your statement will be read into the public record. Please note that that is a 2-minute rule. We will be cutting you off. Please understand that if I do cut you off at 2 minutes, it's not me trying to be rude or that we do not think that your comments are important. Rather, that we need to make sure that we maintain consistency across the board so everybody has the same opportunity. With that being said, we do also recognize individuals who are here representing a group. If you are here representing a group and would like the additional 3 minutes that would come with that, you would have needed to talk to our city manager, Wendy Thomas. She will let me know so that we are able to give you that extra time. I know she spoke with some of you already to confirm who they might be representing. So just please be aware of that it's not me being rude, it's simply me being consistent as we go through that process. All right? With that, I will go ahead and open the public comment portion of our meeting. If you have a public comment, please come to the podium, state your name, and begin your comment.
My name's Curtis Brinkerhoff. I'm over on Napa Ridge Cove. You could say this is related to 9.2, but somewhat indirectly. My biggest concern is really, I shared the idea that I don't want to see a manipulation of some of the benefits of the calculations on density points related to this property. And I believe it's very hard for you guys to get a full picture of that when you don't look at or can't look at those things holistically. And I appreciate the council kind of going through that last time you met. But in that regard, if we are going to give up any open space as it relates to the ordinances that have been adopted, we need to make sure that we are protected in that neighborhood and that open space is dedicated to replace that and that there's no pay a fee in lieu of around those properties to let them build a house and pay a fee in lieu of. I think that's absolutely wrong. In the draft documents that were submitted, there's a statement that says the city council has voted that in the interest of the city and its residents, we will move forward. In the interest of the city and its residents, we need to protect our open space, we need to protect our community, and we absolutely should protect that if we are going to give up any open space, they be required to put in open space with a park dedicated in that neighborhood and not allow exceptions and not allow manipulation of the density points.
Thank you very much.
My name is Cody Corral. I'll be speaking for a small group. A lot of them aren't here due to COVID. I won't be using the full 5 minutes, even close, unless you want me to. I can talk to you about whatever you want. So, I talked to you last time. I mentioned some comments last time. My comments really haven't deterred. We've been very involved in the discussions and in this development. We live at the street just north of this development. And when in regards, I know it's hard to kind of talk just about the rezone without discussing the development in general, but in regards to just the rezone, because I know that's why we're here. Personally, I know a lot of us feel like if it can be part of something greater, if there can be a greater purpose for it, and it can be incorporated in something like that, I don't think many of us don't mind that, but we do want to make sure that it is part of something greater, whether that be a greater development, more open space, just part of something greater, as we kind of consider rezoning forestry recreation area. So that's all I have to say. No recipes, nothing like that. Have a good Christmas and enjoy the lights.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We did get that recipe after, just so you know.
Any other individuals that like to comment, public comment at this time?
Try not to get as emotional this time. I'm Doug Phillips, I'm Val's stepson. Just real quick, again, like I stated before, Val's owned that land for like 50 years. His reason for developing now is because of his health and his age. Get us some of those lots are going to his family so that we're closer to him. I don't know about the whole development, just the 5 acres that Val has. The other 5 acres I don't know, but the lot layout that they have right now for his 5 acres are quarter, third, and half acre lots. So, and a big part of Val's land is really steep. That's being donated back to the city. So there is a lot of open land being given back to the city by Val. You know, it's just, we all want to keep Harriman small, but unfortunately, our population keeps growing, man. I mean, growth is necessary. Without growth, people aren't gonna have places to live, and our local economy will go south, so, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. Any other individuals that would like to speak this time? If not, seeing none, I will close the public comment
We need to
portion of the
check
meeting.
online.
Oh, yes, thank you. Do we have those electronic? It looks like we do, so I'll turn the time over to our recorder to get those into the record.
Yeah, so our first comment is from Teresa Lacey, and her comment is, will the Harriman Council consider putting ranked choice voting into effect for the 2021 local elections? And our second comment is offered by Lanny Jensen. And did the council members realize that the new Edge community, Mountain Ridge, only offers one style of Rambler homes because the lots are too small for all the others? Basically, all the houses have to be 2-story. I was looking forward to this community, but it is unfortunate that they only offer one Rambler, and of course, it's the smallest house.
Can you repeat the name on that?
Lanny Jensen.
And we have None waiting to make comment as well? Okay, so we will close the public comment portion of our meeting at this time. Thank you for those that have participated on that. We will move on to item 6, which is City Council Board and Committee reports. Okay.
I've just
I was
got
like,
one.
I'll move on.
I've got a quick one. Western Growth Coalition, we had a meeting earlier this week talking about the transportation priorities for the west side. I think we've all seen kind of that basic list of, the intersections along Bangerter, Mountain View, some east-west connectivity on several of the roads. It's the same priorities we've seen kind of circulated around. That committee kind of took a vote to endorse a letter endorsing certain projects. They're not necessarily in order of priority per se. So it was recommended that we do reach out to our legislative bodies and explain to them what our local community's priorities are. I think, Tammy, just for your sake, we did get word that there has been a bill circulating years past they call it Christmas tree bill. That will be circulated again, and so it might be a good idea to reach out to that representative, explaining to him what our specific priorities out here are. But they have asked that we as a council review that and perhaps pass a resolution in endorsement of that list of priorities for the western side, just to support that before the legislative session starts. So we should expect to maybe see a copy of that circulating here pretty quick, but that's about it. There was one other thing, that there are rumors of the state doing some pretty significant bonding to speed up the timeframe on some of the projects that are listed in the regional council's list of priorities, those kind of things. However, that bonding would not change the priorities, it would just speed them up. So instead of something being done by maybe 2027, it might be done by 2025 or 2024 with this kind of bonding. So it looks like they are paying attention to the need for these infrastructure things, but again, it's kind of rumor at this point, but just thought I would share that with the council.
Just one very quick update from the South Valley Sewer District. We did hold our budget hearing. It's actually the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We did receive a few public comments on that. But again, we have approved that budget for the next calendar year for the sewer district. Again, a very fiscally responsible organization. They have some great leadership down there. That budget was passed with no service fee increases proposed in there at all. So
That's the kind of budget I like to hear.
It is.
All right, we will move on to item 7.1, introduction of the 2020-2021 Harriman Royalty. Laura.
Thank you for the opportunity to come tonight. We just recently had our pageant for this year, and this is our new royalty. We're super excited to work with them this year. There's some outstanding women, and I'm really glad that I get to be part of working with them. So our Miss Harriman is Clara Fowler. Our first attendant is Paige Welch, and our second attendant is Olympia Peed. I'm going to turn the time over to our Miss Harriman to kind of talk to you about her social impact statement and what she's working on this year to push out to the community.
Hello, I'm Clara Fowler, like she said, and this year my social impact initiative, or the cause I'll be working towards this year, is called Unplug, Connect to Real Life Experiences. And with social media usage becoming increasingly used in our society, I want to bring awareness to the importance of digital wellness, and I want to, especially within our community, use the Harriman social media accounts and the Miss Harriman social media account to bring awareness to how people are using social media, so that way they can connect to what matters most to them. And I have a couple ideas for events this year I'd love to do, and I'm looking forward to working with Laura on those. And I'm so excited for this year and for what it'll bring. So thank you.
So we'd just like to thank you guys for supporting the Arts Council and all that they do, and for keeping this program going. I think it's a benefit to our city. And we'd like to thank the school district for helping us keep this event going with everything getting shut down. We were worried we couldn't do it, but they worked with us and we got it done. So can we get some pictures? Are you guys okay with
As
that?
always, we would like to come down and take some socially distanced
Perfect.
pictures.
Perfect.
As we all fall out of our little cubicles. Swear one of those things got tripped.
Those cubicles aren't as big as they look. Should have stayed up there.
All right, everybody give your biggest frown. Nobody will see it. All right, 1, 2, 3.
I want you all to know that these ladies. You're listening?
We can't hear a word you're saying, Wendy.
These ladies rode in the back of a truck the entire parade route on Monday
know.
night. So
Good for you.
kudos to them for toughing that out.
It's tough.
I sat in a nice warm chair, so good on you.
Once again, just to our Harriman staff, Laura, and everyone involved in putting on the pageant, excellent job in the work you do. And we're very, very fortunate, obviously, as Steve already mentioned, just the community we live in, but in particular, the up-and-coming youth we have in our community too, and the examples they set. So strong work, all of you. Congratulations.
Good job. Thank you very much for being part of our
Just
community.
to make sure, Paige, this is your second year, right? Welcome back. Congratulations again.
All right. With that, we'll move on to item 8, which is the consent agenda. I will accept a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jared? And I will vote yes. That motion passes. All right, item 9.1, discussion and consideration for the adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $25 million aggregate principal amount of water revenue and refunding bonds, Series 2021, and related matters. Alan? Jonathan, did you have anything to add? No? Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate you being here. Any questions from the council?
Just want to verify that this, or these parameters would be aligned with what the original presentation of priorities were, not the expanded list that we had considered, right? Just the first group? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, they're the original ones, and you know, they're slightly higher, just because we need some negotiation room in some of these things, but yeah, these are in relation with what we originally did. We do not believe that they'll be as high as what's in the parameters resolution, but you might end up with higher coupons in one area so that you get more of a premium or so forth. So, you know, there's some things back and forth with investors, but we rely heavily on Zions Bank to help us get to the best spot, and also with our underwriters that help with these. So, yeah, this is in line with what we originally talked about. $20 million of new construction money and refunding $7 million of existing money.
I do have a question on the 3%, Ellen. Is that what we would anticipate, or what are you seeing bonds coming in at right now? It's my understanding they're substantially lower than that. Is that correct?
They are. Yes, they are. And you know, this all comes down to what you get from investors, but you know, an investor might want to see a 5% coupon, but they're willing to give you a premium that brings the effective rate of the interest down to 2%. You know, but so these are net interests that we're talking about, but you know, we have to be in the 2% range. And when I talked with Jonathan earlier, I guess it was last week now, we were looking at 2.2 right at that particular day, which is like 1% less than the last performer they gave us. So things move a little bit, but yeah, we're expecting them to be considerably lower than what these amounts are.
Okay.
We went, we met with our bond attorney and with Jonathan from Zions Bank, come up with what they felt most comfortable with as far as the parameters resolution. But yeah, we do expect that it'll be lower, but you know, bankers don't want to quote you one thing and then give you something a little bit higher. They always hedge on the upside, so.
Sure. You don't want to have to come back when you don't find it lower than that.
So they love to come and tell us it was better, but they don't want to tell us it's worse.
Alan, can you remind us what this brings our ratio to?
It's just under 4 times coverage.
Okay. So that means that, just for the public, that means that if we have enough revenue coming in to cover the bonds 4 times over. So we have more than enough to cover what we would need to pay for all of these bonds. Currently.
Just to clarify that though, Mayor, we have 4 times more. After we do this, we would have 4 times enough to pay all of our bonds, not just this one. So this is looking at total coverage ratio. So, you know, we've got 3 or 4 other bonds, and with those plus these, we would still be at 4 times.
Which just so that the public is aware, we had a very lengthy discussion about this, and the amount that we chose was intended to preserve that ratio to make sure that we are financially stable and healthy long term. And so we could have bonded for substantially more. We have chosen not to maintain that fiscal stability.
And I think there's just one more thing for public consumption at this point, is the repayment for this comes from the water services that are paid for on a monthly basis, the revenue for the water. There's not going to be an increase to water fees. There's not going to be an increase to anything to cover this bond. This is just being paid for out of the normal revenue that's paid for your monthly water bill.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that, because I have felt really uneasy about having to approve this just because I don't like having to borrow $25 million. But the problem is we have some infrastructure needs that are pretty critical. Obviously, water is pretty critical and a big concern to our residents. And if we push this out by just collecting that money and then doing them as we collect the money, we look at more expense, because every year, as I'm sure you all realize, that building costs go up every year. It seems like every week they go up nowadays, but so the expense to the city just continues to increase and increase and increase. So if we can lock these in and get them done now, we'll actually save money over the life of this bond, because we'll be taking care of the infrastructure now, providing the service to the residents, and actually saving money in the long run, primarily because the bond rates are so low right now too. It's money that's available at a very low interest rate that we can, inflation will outpace the interest rate on this. So that's why, the only reason I can feel at ease about voting for this.
Chair, if I can add just one thing onto the comment you just made too, is one of the things we've talked about and we've heard repeated by a lot of residents is there's a desire to build infrastructure in advance of development, not infrastructure after development to try and catch up. And I think that although I personally believe there was more we could have bonded for with the historically low rates, the very robust debt service coverage ratio that we have, that would have put us even more in advance of some of those things at a really good price. I still think that what we have on this list is a well-considered list of projects, and I think it's really important for us to do these things. And like Sherry explained, bonding is really the only way we're going to accomplish those in any kind of a timely manner. So I'm in support of this bond as well.
Jared, do you have any comments?
Nope, I made all mine last.
Okay. If there are no further comments or discussion on this item, I'm willing to take a motion.
I'll just make one final comment, just because I want to reiterate this, and it's probably already been said, but please remember, this is not anticipated revenue from anticipated growth, which will come. This will help supply some of the growth, which is coming inevitably because there's development agreements in place, so it's coming. So that debt coverage we were talking about is just existing revenue. So we're not dependent on, if the market crash and those homes don't get built, this bond is not dependent on that money. It's just simply with the revenue that's currently coming into the city.
Good comment, Sherry.
Well said.
Well, if I'm ready to make a motion, if you'll bear with me since it's a long motion to make.
I think you should make the motion, Clint.
It goes on to a second page.
Okay. I will motion to approve resolution number R41-2020, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than 25 million aggregate principal amount of water revenue and refunding bonds, Series 2021, fixing the maximum aggregate principal amount of the bond, the maximum number of years over which the bond may mature, the maximum interest rate which the bonds may bear, and the maximum discount from par at which the bonds may be sold, delegating to certain officers of the issuer the authority to approve the final terms and provisions of the bonds within the parameters set forth herein, providing for the publication of a notice of public hearing and bonds to be issued, providing for the running of a contest period and setting of a public hearing date, authorizing and approving the execution of an indenture, a premium official statement, an official statement, a bond purchase agreement, an official notice of bond sale, and other documents required in connection therewith, authorizing the taking of all actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions completed by this resolution and related matters.
Before I take a second on that, I just want to clarify that you intended to say a preliminary official statement, not a premium official statement.
Thank you for the catch. Yes, preliminary official statement. And whoever seconds it, I think they should have to read the whole thing again.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will take a vote. Sherry?
I'll say yes, and I'd like to reserve a comment at the end.
Absolutely. Steve?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And Clint?
Yes.
I will vote no, and I will make a comment after Sherry. Sherry, go ahead.
Just another thing to share here, and this has been discussed in previous meetings, but just to have it on the record here too, is that although some of this will facilitate more building, our staff will work diligently with the developers that are bringing more buildings and homes into our area to make sure that they are participating as much as possible in bringing this infrastructure so these dollars get spread as widely as possible.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'll just make a quick comment, really on the heels of what Sherry just said, and that is the reason that we are really in such a good financial shape in terms of our water revenue bonds and the ability to go out for this is great management, great personnel that work for the city. So I really would like to call out the excellent work that Justin, as the Public Works Director, and everyone in the Water Department does, forecasting the needs and maintaining a water system in an area that is growing as rapidly as we are is no small feat. Especially when you're talking about building of tanks that hold millions of gallons of water and the pipelines to disseminate that water to our growing areas. Again, there's been much said already about the financial position of just the water side of things. And again, that comes from years of good management. So I just wanted to call out to Justin and the staff. I appreciate the work that you do and the ability that you have to come to this body who has to make these types of decisions and be able to very clearly articulate the needs and show the needs and where they are and how they benefit our community long term. And the ability that we have right now, just as Councilman Shields mentioned, to really get out ahead of the needs that we know are coming and the obligations really that we have with some of those development agreements are out there. So thank you very much, Justin.
Jared, do you have a comment? Take that as, okay. As to my no vote, I just want for the public to be aware that my no vote has more to do with the parameters of this bond and not the bond itself. I believe that we are being overly conservative, and we are doing this, are not taking advantage of a current benefit that we have between interest rates and opportunities that we have, and those costs are going to increase over time. And this, our residents are going to end up paying more over time to put in this infrastructure because we are choosing to be, in my opinion, excessively conservative in this particular number. With that being said, that's my concern with this. It is not, that infrastructure needs to come in. We need to make it happen. And so my no vote has to do with parameters and not the bond itself. All right, moving on. We will move on to item 9.2, discussion and consideration of an ordinance approving a rezone request submitted by James Horsley, Riverside Development LLC, on behalf of Val Johnson, property owner, for 5 acres of property in the proposed Valhalla subdivision from FR 2.5 Forestry Recreation, 2.5 acre minimum, to a 0.5 agricultural, 0.5 acre minimum, located approximately at 6477 West Valhalla Circle. Michael.
Good evening again, and thank you. As you can see in the audience, our applicant is here tonight, and I believe he intends to address you following my presentation. As the council is aware, we discussed this on November 18th. We briefed you on the application to date, and tonight you have an opportunity to make a decision. Your options are to approve the request as proposed. You may modify the request. You discussed in the staff report that there is a potential to add a zoning condition. You could also consider another zone that is less intense than what is being requested. You can table it if you feel like you need further information before you make a decision, or of course you can deny the application that is before you tonight. This is a copy or our city's general plan, and you can see the subject property there with the star. The next slide is showing a little closer, and as described in the staff report, the property has two different general plan designations. A portion of it, a very small portion on the north, is low-density residential, and most of that is open space. Now, the open space, just to clarify, this is privately owned property. There is, of course, open space that the city owns and controls, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. This is a private property, and the general plan is just intending that the future of this property would be some type of open space. In the staff report, I quoted from the current general plan describing what open space is intended for. It says, open space is for the intended use of natural open space, hillsides, trails, and resource protection areas. Envisioned amenities include parks, multi-purpose trails for pedestrians, cyclists, ATV users, and horses, cultural recreation centers, gun ranges, etc. Now again, the general plan is a vision document for the city. It's intended to say what we are trying to move towards in the future. However, the zoning map or the zoning ordinance are the rules for development. So this is what the current development may be allowed. It's currently FR 2.5, which is a forestry recreation zone. And it also has an overlay, this hillside protection, that is largely put in place in areas that have a 30% steep slope. So again, even though the open space really does limit intended uses as the general plan, the governing document for development is really the zoning map. And again, you can see this more closely. You can see that there is an existing home on the property. The property, of course, is 5 acres. It's our understanding that the intent for future development is that the home would stay would be accessed by a private lane or private road. The proposed rezone does not remove the overlay. So all of the restrictions that come with the overlay would still be in place regardless of the base zone. The proposal has a corresponding subdivision that has been heard by the Planning Commission and was tabled. Pending the outcome of this decision, we will re-engage the Planning Commission and the public hearing process with the Planning Commission. This was an earlier version of the subdivision proposal. This is what the Planning Commission saw. Essentially, it's in 2 halves. You can see that there is one long road, this solemn way that terminates in the cul-de-sac. We had a lot of public feedback, comment on this proposal, being very concerned about speeds, about slopes, just about the general safety and serviceability of this design. Since then, the applicant, in working with the neighborhood, we've heard that the community has really preferred this double cul-de-sac plan, and it's my understanding that this came directly from the community in meeting with the developer, saying this is a proposal that they felt better about. Now, that's not to say everybody. I'm sure that there are people who would prefer, you know, that this wouldn't happen at all. But there is a potential to do this double cul-de-sac plan. There's 2 different layouts, kind of depending whether or not the what type of zone might be applied here. If it's a half-acre zone, if that is rezoned, or potentially a 1-acre zone. This half-acre zoning could potentially leave this parcel B, which is, again, largely where that hillside overlay is currently sitting and really heavily restricts development. There was, at some point in time, there was a discussion of whether or not the city might be interested in acquiring that piece. We have not made any decisions on that or made a commitment. I think in general, we've been very reserved at thinking that that would be appropriate for the city, but there's been no decision on that issue. The Planning Commission, as the council knows, voted to recommend denial, 6-0. They did have discussion, and I re-listened to the minutes. I want to make sure it's clear. Sometimes the commission will make a motion, and then they wish to explain their motion after the fact. In re-listening to the minutes, they actually discussed some reasons for their concerns prior to their vote. So this was not linked to their motion, but they essentially identified that they felt like a transitional zone between the FR 2.5 and the surrounding 8.25 zone might be better suited by an A1 zone. And again, during the public hearing process, we did hear that residents would prefer to maintain the existing FR 2.5 in order to maintain, preserve the natural open space. In the staff report, we stated that there are certain standards in the ordinance that the council, that we should consider, but the council is not bound to follow those findings or standards. But it is in your report as part of my analysis. Again, the Planning Commission's recommendation is for denial on this request.
Real quick question for you, Michael. On the general plan specifically, that open space zone or whatever, what is the actual density allowed on that particular zone as the general plan currently shows?
So again, the governing, the answer to that question is actually the zoning ordinance. Because as you can see in the intent of the open space, if you were to follow that intent, it wouldn't allow for residential development. But the zoning is currently in place, and so that is what governs. The FR 2.5 requires a 2.5 acre lot minimum.
But the open space, normally we wouldn't allow, if say, I know it's general plan, but
Right.
say we went with the general plan exactly, there wouldn't be anything built there, correct?
There wouldn't be any residential units assigned under the open space, right?
Michael, just a quick question. Does the city own any of the property to the east or south of where this parcel B might be located?
I believe that's correct. And Blake, you probably,
It's a little,
let me go to the,
it's a little quirky there because there's a church. So I think the church of the residing bishopric still owns a piece there that could get deeded to the city in the future. And then Salt Lake County actually owns a piece in there still too. So I think they're leftovers from when this area annexed into Harriman. So
But there would be no further development to the south or to the east?
to the south,
Requests.
I think there is one more private property
Yes.
there. He's come into our public comment. His name is Chance Gledhill. He owns the property to the south. So there is still one more piece to develop to the south.
that's correct. And he is hoping to secure some type of utility easement that might facilitate future development of his property. And that would be considered as part of any future subdivision proposal. As I mentioned, the applicant is here tonight, and I know as per council policy, you will allow him to address you at this point in time, unless you have any other questions for me.
Go ahead and have him come up, please.
Okay.
Michael, just, I want to verify three things. And they're kind of all the same question. Does this parcel of the subdivision plan result in any difference or impact on the density or number of units in the rest of the plan, whether or not this is FR 2.5, A1, or A.5? Does any of those three have an impact on the density or number of units in the rest of
No.
the subdivision?
So the density, the potential to increase the density from 1.8, as the council knows, there are certain density kind of bonus criteria. That only applies to property that's within the 8.25 zone. The only way that this property could potentially affect that is if this was also being rezoned to 8.25.
Got it. So that that's off the table how this would impact
Right.
any distance. Okay, just want to make sure, because that was concern that was raised earlier by one of the residents, so.
And this was never fully vetted or discussed by Planning Commission to do this as an A1, because I thought we discussed all this last time to potentially send it back to Planning Commission and have them look at this as an
So
A1.
I did report that to the applicant, that there is an opportunity to return to the Planning Commission and consider changing the application to a 1 acre request. It was his preference to return to you for a decision and not amend his application.
Okay, why don't you have the applicant come up, please?
Okay, let me just do my COVID duty here.
Good job, thank you.
Get him out of here.
Which, while we're waiting, I want to express my appreciation to members of the audience for all appropriately wearing masks while they're in the chambers. We appreciate your compliance with those requirements. As you can see, so are we, and we are in these fun little boxes to help address that as well.
And we hate it. Wait, did I say that out loud?
Come on up, please.
Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm here tonight representing Val Johnson. Doug did a good job of kind of explaining who owns the property and kind of what we're looking for here. So as you guys know, I wasn't able to talk last time we discussed this thing. I think I could have helped with some of the questions that were being asked about the property and stuff, because they're good questions. I mean, definitely we want to make sure, I mean, again, we're not trying to pull more density or anything like that and stuff. We're just trying to get the Johnson family a couple extra lots. A couple things were said about, you know, developer lining his pockets and stuff. Has nothing to do with me. I don't get any bonus density. I don't get any extra lots. I don't get anything extra for doing this. The 2 extra lots would go to the family members is who it would go to. I get 1 lot there no matter what, whether it's a 2.5 acre lot, whether it's an acre lot, whether it's a 1/2 acre lot. Doesn't matter to me what it is. I'm here to try to help the family. They're the ones that own the property. I don't own the property. If you look at who owns the property, I bought the 5 acres to the west. The Johnson family still owns this property and will always own that portion of it there. So, but maybe we can just jump into some of the questions that were asked about it. I know, Mr. Shields, that you talked about, you know, why would the developer not want to do acre lots instead of 1/2 acre lots? And really what it comes down to is it comes down to the layout. If you looked at the 2, I don't know, Jonathan, if you're the one bringing up, who's bringing up this?
Jonathan over here is.
Oh, you're bringing it up? So if we could bring up the 2 maps that he was showing. So he had one that had the acre lot layout on it, and then the one after it was the 1/2 acre lot. Keep on going. Right there. So you have, so this is the 1/2 acre lot layout, and if you can see, I mean, the lots just, they lay out better. They're better conformed to having homes, for lots to be able to go, you know, in a better location, to have good side yards, everything like that, on the 1/2 acre lot density. And then you can see the acre lot ones. You can see that they are just a little more funkier shaped than the 1/2 acre lots there. And of course, we go all the way up the hillside, and we take up the hillside. So I know that questions were being asked, and Councilmember Shields kind of said it at the end there too, is the developer trying to go 1/2 acre lots to get more density, more bonus density, or anything like that? Not what we're trying to do. Has nothing to do with it. Whether you guys decide to approve a 1/2 acre lot density or an acre lot density, the layout will be the exact same. The layout will be, Val will keep his house there, and then we'll have 3 lots there, is what it'll be. It's just if those lots will be acre lots or 1/2 acre lots. My preference, and knowing and being a part of the city for a while now and developing and stuff, and as you guys know, millions of dollars have been spent preserving the hillside. You bought a lot of property out there preserving the hillside to try to keep that feel of Harriman City. All we're trying to do here is if we do the 1/2 acre lot density, that 2 acre back portion would be donated to the city. No cost to the city, no nothing. And to make sure it's clear, when we donate that to the city, we are not getting any type of bonus density for that. We don't get any benefit for giving the city that 2 acres of property. There's nothing that comes to us. So we can leave it the acre lots, and we can let the residents own it, and who knows what they do with it? Who knows if they go up there and do a racetrack up there? I don't know. I don't know what they do with it. Or we could do it with the 1/2 acre lots and be able to have the city preserve that land, and as Blake kind of said, we project that you'll get the church property behind there to the east someday and stuff like that, and be able to have all the open space that would be required there. So a couple other things on here. So I want to make sure that you know, the residents, and Doug kind of said it too with Val. I mean, he's lived here for over 50 years. You know, as he's lived here, you can see the developments that's happened around him. The development to the south, which is straight up the screen there from his lot there. So actually, if you look at the slope map that's on there, there's actually 2 of those homes that are actually built on the 30% slope. They're literally built on that 30% slope. The rest of the property that's down there is pretty much on the same slope that we would be building these other houses on. So, you know, to DeVal and his property rights and kind of the precedence that's been set in the area, I think he should be able to develop his property and still preserve the open space that the city is wanting to preserve. If you look back on the comments that were made when we presented this to Planning Commission, so the staff report actually said, the open space designation is intended for properties that have greater than 30% slope and are less likely to be developed. Then it says the lower portion of this subject property is less than 30% slope and should be considered for the same designation as the surrounding properties. So again, if you look at, you know, why the open space designation was put in place, it was to preserve the 30% slope. It wasn't to put Val's whole property, that not even half of his property is 30% slope, and we all of a sudden clump that into, well, since he has some 30% slope on his property, we're going to make it all open space. So to the point where I actually sent an email to you guys showing you the topo map that we did that shows exactly where that 30% slope is. And if you look at that 30% slope, we're not going to build any homes on the 30% slope. The one lot that's straight in the cul-de-sac that will have some backyard space that will be in the 30% slope, but the home will not be built on the 30% slope, which gives you less likely opportunity for rock retaining walls and things like that. So, but again, I just want to make sure that we understand that we're okay with it. We're okay with the acre lot. If you want to do the acre lot one, I wasn't given the opportunity to speak in the Planning Commission meeting. I would have got up and said, absolutely, if you guys want to do acre lots, we're fine with it. We're just trying to get the 2 lots for Val and his family is all we're trying to get. I just believe if council was to look at this and say, we're going to get, you know, the 3 lots plus Val's house no matter what, and I can give him half-acre lots and get the city 2 acres of property that we didn't pay anything for, I don't know how a council wouldn't want that. Or we could do the acre lots and, you know, just leave it with the residents out there and stuff. So that's the only reason that we're asking for the half-acre lot zoning. It will not, and if we can put a condition on it that says, you know, if you decide to approve the half-acre lot, that says it's capped at this. You have these 3 lots plus Val's house, and that's it. There's no other future, you know, development that could happen there or anything. If, you know, Val decided to do something with his house or anything, that's what it is. That's what it will always stay. So I would like to, if there's, I don't know if you're going to give me an opportunity to get up and talk after we discuss, or if there's any questions, I would love to answer any questions that you have, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and understanding what we wanted to do here.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, apparently we have none at this time. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you'll have a seat, Mike, if you come back up for us.
Oh, Mike, what did you do? I can do it. And there it is.
He broke it.
He broke it.
It's good.
You got it.
All right, any questions, discussion? What do you guys think?
I just go back to what we spoke about on this already. First of all, Planning Commission denied this, and it wasn't just a few of them denied it. They all denied it. And so I think that we had a very honest, open discussion to say, take it back to PC and get, if you want it to be acre lots, run it through PC and get the A1 zoning. So I think that's the process that should go through. It seems simple to me. We can't see topo on this. We can't see anything on this.
I've got just a thought that I'll share, and not that I disagree with what Sherry just said at all. And having served many years on the Planning Commission, I definitely respect the work that that body does and consider their input very, very heavily and generally am in alignment with those recommendations. And I will say this: I'm definitely in alignment with their comments about a transition or a different zoning there for buffering as you transition down to the 8.25. I guess the one point that I'll just make, or one I guess issue that I'm having just trying to reconcile a little bit myself is again, this area is encumbered by the 30% slope, which again, you'll have the underlying zoning that can dictate density, but it doesn't remove the requirements that come with that 30% slope and the ability to build in those areas. And so, again, just trying to reason through some of these options in my mind. With that in place, obviously there's nothing that can be built there, regardless of if it's a 8.5 or an A1 zone in there. The 3% slope remains. It still comes with the same stipulations. So you're going to have that land that stays as it is, again, regardless of what that base zone is down in this area. In regards to whether the appropriate buffer is a A1 or an 8.5, again, I definitely see the reasoning, and I don't dispute the comments that were made by Planning Commission. But if we look at something else we talked about earlier tonight in our work meeting, as we look out off of 7300 West and the buffering that we expect up in that area where it abuts up to high country in the unincorporated county. There is development on the other side of that, of our city boundary there. And they are larger lots, primarily 5 acres up in that area, but yet our practice is only an 8.5, a half acre buffer between that 5 acre to the 8.25. And so, again, as I kind of look at it and try and think reasonably, what do I think is the appropriate buffer there, A1 or 8.5? Again, I'm trying to reconcile which one I think is the most appropriate in that area, and if I think that A1 truly has to be it, or again, looking at other areas of the city where we've required that buffering to even larger lots that do have development on it, where in this area in the FRR zone, we're not going to have development there. The whole discussion about whether the city even wants that property, I think really isn't part of the discussion for me right now. That's a whole nother issue to really tackle of if we were to go with the 8.5 and end up with 2.5 acres that could be deeded to the city. I really don't even want to get into that because I don't know that it's really feasible for the city to own that property. There's a lot of other questions there for me. Mm-hmm. So what it comes down to is knowing that can't be built on, again, is what do I think is the appropriate zone based on some of the things that we do in other places of the city. So that's just a comment that I wanted to make.
Michael, can I ask a question? As I look at this map, I don't see any other A.5 zone parcel on the map here, anywhere identified. Is there any other A.5 zone along this open space border around here that would give us another example of where this has been done?
There are, and you can see it's not really relevant, but up at the top of the screen, right in the middle, you can see some 8.5 there. And I apologize that I don't have an image that goes farther out on the zoning map.
Oh, up at the very top. Okay, sorry, you're
yeah.
right. I do see it up there.
But
not along the hillside.
yeah, but not.
That 8.5, that's in that neighborhood we were.
Yeah.
working, oh yeah, I understand, okay.
And so, and I'll just comment back on the 8.5, because I was opposed to that when it was in Rose Basin also. I don't think half an acre is an
Right.
appropriate transition zone into 5 acres. I think that we really did not do our neighbors a benefit by putting that much density up next to 5-acre lots. So I was opposed to that also. So
Right.
I'll be consistent in saying I don't think that that's an adequate transition.
Jared, do you have any comments?
That's, Jared, I'm having the same kind of mental block here, is that I'm inclined to believe that an A1 zone would serve as a buffer, and that I think would probably be the more appropriate action here. But I don't like the idea of unilaterally going against a unanimous declination from the Planning Commission, just based on kind of my hunch or impression. I mean, that's, and yeah, I think if, that's where I'm stuck, because as the way I see it right now, and I'm just speaking for myself, I don't think I'm inclined to support the half-acre rezone. I might be inclined to entertain the 1-acre rezone, but I don't have a recommendation from the Planning Commission about a 1-acre rezone. And I think that in the absence of that, I'm not prepared to make that modification, if that makes sense. I'd much rather have them vet that out and then come back to us. And I think we said that same thing last time, but I'm kind of stuck. I don't want to say no outright and cause whatever fallout of delays or reapplication or whatever needs to happen. I'd rather not force the applicant to go through that process again. I don't know. I'm just speaking out loud about that. I'm having a difficult time resolving the request that's being asked, because I feel like I should say no to it based on what the Planning Commission said. I think there is a medium, but I'm not prepared to vote in favor or recommend that until the Planning Commission has had a say.
Yeah, it just feels like it could have even been on last week's Planning Commission. You know, I mean, my intent is not to delay the ability for them to build another home and help with their family situation. That's not the intent here at all, but I think that's why the discussion was like it was last time. Take it back through PC. Let's have them vet through our ordinances, look at everything, check out all those things. I like the 1-acre lot buffer zones, because even though they may not build anything on that, guess what? We won't get a lot of complaints about a trail right next to their house, because they're going to have their own buffer zone between that and any trail system we might have on the mountain.
Michael, I've got a slightly related question for you. What's the difference between as far as building? What's the difference between the FR and the agriculture? So, like, what restrictions does the FR have that the agriculture does not?
There are additional limitations on what type of land uses are allowed in the FR 2.5. So
basically,
it's a
it
much
removes
narrower.
it's a lot of it's removing animal rights, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay. So I'm looking at this map. I'm looking at our general plan. Can you go back to the general plan?
Yes.
I look at this general plan, and yes, I understand that the general plan is general. I disagree in some ways with that. I could go quote the code on the legality of what we can do with our general plan. But I see this and I see open space, and so I don't see. When I look at this lot, I don't see it as an agricultural lot. Now, at the same time, I also understand that there's probably already agriculture stuff going on that lot as it is. When I go back to the zoning map, the actual map now, I look at this and I'm trying to rectify what should be there versus what we what we have there. As open space, being that a large portion of that is encumbered with 30%, I personally feel that it should probably stay as an FR zone and not as an A zone. With that being said, I originally was just kind of going to say, man, 2.5, let's just keep it there. Let's keep it as it is. That's what's intended to be there. And then I look south and realize that south of that and surrounding that is FR1. And so I am much more comfortable seeing that that it already is an FR1 further south, which is farther up the mountain. Moving that to an FR1 zone, because it does kind of, to me, appear to be an island of zoning at that point. But I would like to see it as an FR1 zone, an A1 zone maybe, but I would prefer FR just because of the overlay. With that being said, I'm in agreement that I'm not comfortable voting to approve, something the Planning Commission has voted against or had voted recommending denial. And I'm not comfortable voting for something that is, different than what was seen by the Planning Commission. I think we've gotten ourselves into trouble in the past by doing something different than what the Planning Commission has recommended. And so I'd like to see that we can either deny it or we can table it and let them go back. But at this point, I'm not comfortable approving this based on the information we have. So that's my thought at this point.
And there's no application fee or anything, right, Michael? They can just take it back and run it back through the Planning Commission adjusted, correct?
Yes, the applicant can certainly amend the application.
So it's not going to cost them anymore or anything like that. It just needs to hit a meeting, right?
But time is money.
Right, that's why
yeah.
I think that the direction was last meeting, to get it on PC instead of coming here again.
So I'm going to make a recommendation at this point to this body. I'm going to recommend that we continue this item and give that, with that clear direction, give that that applicant an opportunity to go back to the Planning Commission. If he chooses to bring it back to us again on a future agenda with no changes, I think it will be our intent as this body to deny it. But I also want to be, as Steve has said, we want to be, as accommodating as reasonably possible, not slowing down the process, not making them reapply for something that they've obviously gone to a lot of work, already worked with the residents a lot. So that would be my recommendation, is that we continue this without date and give them that opportunity. If it comes back, it would be my intention to deny it at that point, because we've made our stance pretty clear at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's the right course of action. I don't necessarily want to put somebody on the spot. If they really want us to take a vote tonight, we can take a vote. I just don't think that's going to be helpful for them.
I think the better course of action in this is to continue it at this point.
I think that's the proper course too. I would support that action.
Is that a motion? That would be a question for staff, was the appropriateness of remanding it back.
Chase, we talked about this. Do we really have the authority in our ordinance to do that? Is that?
It doesn't say that we can. It also doesn't say that we can't.
Okay.
My recommendation would be to take a more definitive course of action. I mean, what you're potentially doing by continuing it is leaving it open still, right? I mean, the applicant still has the opportunity to bring it to the next meeting and get a denial, or they can elect to take it back to the planning commission to amend their application.
But are you recommending we remand it to the planning commission? Or are you recommending that we deny it?
So, well, I guess I don't have a recommendation. What I'm saying is that you can, if you would like to.
Well, that was super helpful.
You can.
No, I think there's a point here is that I really don't want to see this again as a 0.5. I think that's fair. So I would, if there's no objections, I would make a motion that we remand this to the planning commission for review at an alternative zoning.
Because if we deny it, they have to go back through the process all over again, right?
Yeah, they have to reapply.
They have to reapply, right? And that does cost money and even more time. Is
If
that
we
right?
Deny it
They have to
tonight.
start over, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't wish to do that.
I did want to make a comment, and maybe, Mayor, if this may be more appropriate for our city attorney. So the night of the hearing, we had essentially two items, two legislative an administrative matter and a legislative matter. There was, the subdivision was heard first, that was a public hearing, and that was tabled. And most of the conversation that happened that night was part of the subdivision. The applicant mentioned, as he was here before you tonight, that he was frustrated that he didn't have the opportunity to speak to the planning commission. I have not checked the record to see if that's correct. I'm assuming he may be correct. It's possible that maybe that was a procedural oversight on our planning commission's chair to give him an opportunity to speak. I know that in other communities I've worked for, if there was a procedural error, that was an opportunity to remand to cure the procedural error so that there wouldn't be a ground for a potential appeal. But I don't know if our city attorney would want to offer an opinion on that, or if he would like to consider the matter further before making a comment.
Yeah, I think, to answer that question, Mike, I think, again, our code allows us to have that opportunity to remand. Whether it's on that basis or not is really up to the council to determine. And I don't have the answer to whether or not.
And I didn't check the record. It's not something we've been talking about, but I heard him say it tonight, and that caught my attention.
I mean, in that light, that could be one of the bases for the council's decision, or it need not be. But again, I think because it's not explicitly excluded in our code, the council can absolutely just remand it.
Then I would amend my motion to include, to remedy any procedural deficiencies or oversights that may have taken place as part of that remanding of that.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, with that, I'll take a vote. I'm going to start with you, Jared. Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion passes. That item has been remanded back to the planning commission.
Mayor, if I may just make one further comment.
Please.
I have not discussed this with the applicant. We have been telling him that we would not move his subdivision application forward because it includes this 5 acres. If he were to amend his subdivision application and remove the 5 acres from his subdivision application, I think that situation would change and that we could re-engage the planning commission on the remaining portion of the subdivision. I just wanted to be clear. We've been telling people that we would not hear the subdivision until this zoning decision had been made. But you can clearly see if he removes that part of the project, there's no need to wait on the.
What our planning director is telling us is that if these items get separated, part of it can move forward even without this being resolved. So for the members of the public that are here for this particular item, please be aware that it is not an intent for anyone to subvert the system or go around. It is simply an appropriate process. If they divide the part that's already been, basically gone through the process, then the part that still needs to go through the process will continue to go through the process, even though the other part will continue to go through the normal
It's a possibility. I have no idea what the applicant will do.
Just so that the residents are aware that that is a possibility and not an intent to subvert any of the process. We're, the whole point of this discussion is to ensure we go through the correct process, so. All right.
And Michael, again, if there was a procedural issue that happened that they didn't get to fully consider the 8.5, or the applicant didn't get to make a reasoned argument in defense of the 8.5 to the planning commission, part of my motion is that that would get remedied.
Right.
They hear that opportunity
Right.
and see if they would reconsider. If they came back with a unanimous vote for 8.5, that might
That
sway
would
us
be a different
differently, right?
conversation.
So I think A1 is what we are generally looking for their opinion on, but I think the applicant should have the right to do, to apply how he wants to apply, but.
And/or FR1, as the mayor
And/or
suggested,
FR1.
and to understand the
Alternative
differences
zoning
between
to
those.
the 8.5.
If I can't remember if we discussed this in the work meeting last time. Our policy is that those zoning amendments, of course, are heard by the neighborhood committee. I'm assuming that that would not be a step we'd have to go to. We would just do a public hearing with the planning commission.
I think that the developer has been engaged with the community. The
Right.
community is literally here right now. And so I think
Okay.
that they're going to continue to be engaged with that developer. I don't see necessarily there being an issue with having to go through that entire process again.
Yeah.
Okay,
I would agree.
I would agree.
okay.
With that, we will move on. Thank you for those who voiced their opinion on all of those items and for coming to our meeting tonight. We appreciate it. Move on to item 9.3, discussion and consideration of an ordinance amending and adopting certain changes to Title 10 of the Harriman City Code to include water efficiency standards. Jonathan?
Actually, Justin.
I'm not Jonathan, but I am another bald person.
All right, we'll take it.
Close enough.
It's a great look.
I'm not Heidi either, so I apologize for that. My
I was really
enthusiasm.
looking forward to Heidi tonight.
Oh, nobody wants to stay to hear about water
I
efficiency
know,
standards?
I'm apologizing.
Oh, come on. Thank you for being here.
Mayor and council, we don't have a presentation tonight. I think we've seen this multiple times. The intent
No
of-
presentation?
Wait,
Man.
stop slowing him down.
No Heidi, no presentation.
Stop slowing him down.
Oh.
The intent of this is just to bring back, we talked about the ordinances and the title changes in our last meeting. On the 19th, we took it to Planning Commission, and their recommendation was to move forward. They recommended approval of the title changes and ordinances. So the intent tonight is just to get approval for that ordinance to move these water efficiency standards into code.
Can I see a vicinity map?
Yeah.
Sorry, I
So
couldn't.
just picture the city boundaries. and that's-
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
So a couple things I wanted to note is if this gets approved tonight, there will be a 90-day grace period before these go into effect. And the intent of that is to allow communication to go through to all the proper channels, our development community, our builders, and also our residents. And Heidi is working with our communications team to put together some communication packets and information that we can send out to those so we can inform them of the changes, give them some time to make some adjustments because we have builders that are building and want to give them a time to adjust their landscape plans and those types of things so that we're not just dropping it on them. So that's the intent of this. Also, once this is approved, this allows us to go forward with our contract amendment with Jordan Valley. I've been in constant communication with Jordan Valley. They've approved these ordinances. We've sent them to them and received their approval that they meet the intent of what they're trying to do. So we'll start moving that process forward to update our contract and anticipate that will happen here within the next month or two. I'll continue to work with them on that. So at any rate, if you have any questions regarding the ordinance or the title changes, Chase can address those. But other than that, this is items for approval.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, I'll just piggyback on Clint's comment earlier, though. Justin, you do a phenomenal job in managing this department, so I really appreciate all your efforts there. And you're talked about very highly at Jordan Valley, and they appreciate the work that's gone into these, so great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Man, he's okay.
All right, if there's no further discussion, I will accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-35, amending and adopting changes to Title 10 of the Harriman City Code to include water efficiency standards.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jared? And I'll vote yes. That motion passes. We move on to item 9.4, discussion and consideration of a resolution approving a withdrawal agreement between Harriman City and Unified Fire Service Area. Chase?
Thank you, council. So this has been a long time coming, a long negotiated item, a very mutually agreeable negotiated item with UFSA. Councilmember Henderson has represented the city well on that board and expressed our interest, and we have worked with their legal counsel to draft a withdrawal agreement that encapsulates all of those negotiations with UFSA. So some of the material terms of this agreement, I'll just highlight quickly. But again, I've gone over this, I've had Alan review it as well. It represents everything that we've discussed with UFSA from a legal and financial standpoint. The withdrawal is largely the most important provision. That, once this agreement is executed, UFSA will execute an impending boundary action, and what that essentially does is withdraws the boundaries of Harriman from the service area. So it shrinks the size of the service area, and Harriman would no longer be a portion of that. That's the official withdrawal, right? This agreement that we're signing says that we're going to do that, but until that actually happens and the Lieutenant Governor authorizes that, Harriman will still be within the boundaries of it, but not administratively. So that's the most important piece. The other, I guess, one important piece, some of the other important pieces are the distribution of real property. So as part of the withdrawal, the city is receiving two portions of property. One would be Station 103. We are receiving that. And also we are receiving unimproved property on 5860 West Harriman Boulevard. So that was purchased. This actually precedes me. I don't recall the history of all of this. It was property that was part of UFSA, I believe, bought with those funds, and we will receive that property by a special warranty deed. But we are not paying for that property, right? It's part of the withdrawal.
What about 123?
What's that?
Jace, technically we've already paid for that property.
Yeah, I think that's
Not
correct.
over
Thank
off
you,
Harriman
Councilmember
Boulevard.
Henderson. The third item would be the payment of the long-term debt. Part of this, and I laid out the debt schedule, our payment schedule in Exhibit 8 on the staff report. It highlights our obligations for the long-term debt of UFSA, our portion of that debt, rather, and that terminates in 2035 unless we pay it off early, or if UFSA refinances that debt, we would then sit down with UFSA and renegotiate our debt obligations at that point. The final issue or matter that's discussed in the withdrawal agreement would be the distribution of the fund balance. So the city's going to receive about $800,000, which represents our share of UFSA's 15% minimum fund balance. So that, again, will be paid out over time as well. There'll be some offsetting with regard to our debt obligation and the distribution of that fund balance. Again, all of that, I've gone through it. Alan has gone through it as well. You've had it in your packet, had an opportunity to read through that. We all believe from the staff side of things that it represents what we have discussed with this council over the last few months and what has been negotiated with UFSA.
And 123 goes into that debt service, correct? So we are taking ownership of 123 as well, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, there was a question that arose this week that was brought up by Councilman Henderson regarding some equipment that was originally purchased for one of the sites, then was transferred to Eagle Mountain. It's a substantial piece of equipment that is part of the bond, yet it's no longer going to serve our residents, nor, so how do we address that in this motion to make sure that we're compensated appropriately?
Yeah, so I just received this email just minutes before council meeting began. My understanding is it is a piece of equipment, and maybe Councilmember Smith and Chief Smith can explain what that piece of equipment is, what the purpose of it is. I believe, well, I'll give you a moment to do that, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot here, Councilmember Smith. Well, I'm just gonna look up the value of that on that email from UFSA's finance director.
Right. So the piece of equipment that's referenced is, it's an air compressor used to fill the SCBA bottles that each of the firefighters wear. So it's a large piece of equipment, it's an expensive piece of equipment, and it's one that was originally purchased and installed in Station 123 as part of the bond to build 123. And Jared can jump in here anytime, but reading the emails associated with that, UFA has went through basically an assessment of their air management system, which deals with these compressors within their organization, and has made some adjustments into the distribution of those and locations of those compressors, basically to be more efficient within the organization. So the compressor that was originally purchased as part of the new station has been removed from Station 123 and is now housed at Station 252 down in Eagle Mountain. So that piece of equipment that again was tied to the original purchase and build of the station is no longer there. There is part of this, a proposal for UFA to take over ownership of all of, there's a couple of those others that fall in that same category throughout the system of UFA and UFSA. There's a proposal that will be presented for the board, to the board, for them to take ownership of those and full maintenance of those so that they're no longer tied to it. They're really tied to the service that they provide, which I think is appropriate. The outstanding question is how is the remaining balance, the residual value, I believe, that was assigned to that currently is about $16,500.
That's correct.
That's showing the residual value, but again, that is an amount that is financed and taken into account in our payments to purchase that station over time, where that equipment, again, will no longer be there. It will not be something that the city owns at the conclusion of our payments and taking ownership of that station. So how do we reconcile that component within the separation document?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. And I was just reviewing that email from UFSA's finance director, and that does accurately summarize that issue. So based upon that fact, right, I think Councilmember Henderson sent a response email just saying that this would be something we should address, right? The outstanding balance, the debt that was paid towards that from the city and its connection to the funding of Station 123, as well as the residual value of that piece of equipment. That does complicate things going forward because I know UFSA would like to have us execute this agreement as soon as possible. They have executed their portion. Their board has approved the agreement. We could execute it as is and then sit down with them still and try to work out the payment of that. Another option would be to approve the withdrawal agreement on the condition that we sit down with them. Whether or not that we condition that upon them changing either the debt schedule or the fund balance distribution schedule, I think would be a little bit difficult. I think this late in the game, it would be more valuable to condition it upon us having a conversation and not necessarily reaching a definitive resolution. And frankly, I think UFSA has been a great partner in this withdrawal process up to this point. I don't see this as being a stumbling block, and I see that, they have a board meeting on the 15th. We would have an opportunity there to simply address it and have their board discuss it. And I'm confident and hopeful that they would be able to see our perspective and maybe alter that, again, either debt payment or fund balance distribution.
Just to understand the scope, what was the original purchase price of this, or original value of this machine?
The purchase price,
Over $46,000.
let me see if I can find
So we're
that purchase
talking,
price again.
this isn't a multiple $100,000 discussion. This is 50,000 or less discussion.
Yes.
And yeah,
And I would agree with your statement that this is probably something that there's been so much good faith from both sides, great partnership all the way along, very reasonable stances all the way along, that I think we could go ahead and execute what we have with an instruction to follow up and get that amended.
And that would be my recommendation, just because we've come so far. Dollars matter to cities and to taxpayers, and so I think it's still worth having that conversation with you.
Push come to shove, if we're paying for it, wouldn't technically the ownership be ours and we can request to have it sent back to us?
Well, yeah, right, but as part of UFSA funds paid for it, and that wasn't originally a piece of equipment that was negotiated as part of the withdrawal, and it likely would have been had this action taken place during that negotiation phase or even pre.
I think there can be a simple resolution negotiated to it.
I assume that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I absolutely do. You probably might want to check with Jared to see if he has any
I was going to
comments.
say, I'd be interested to hear what Councilmember
That was my
Henderson
next,
has as a member of that board.
next statement. Was going to say, Jared, do you have any comments? So Jared, do you have any comments?
No, I agree with Chase. Let's move forward and we'll work it out.
Is that a motion?
It is.
What exactly was that motion, Jared?
I don't have the red line in front of me.
Here, I'll
Motion to approve this item, somebody take.
I'll bail Jared out here. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R42-2020, approving withdrawal agreement between Harriman City and Unified Fire Service Area, with the caveat they have a conversation about the outstanding piece of equipment.
Is that a caveat or condition?
Huh?
Is that a caveat or a condition?
Caveat.
I'll second.
That's fine.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Jared?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. That motion passes. We'll move on to 9.5, discussion and consideration of a resolution confirming that Harriman City shall not provide the services proposed to be provided by the Harriman City Fire Service Area. Chase.
Thank you. So this resolution is created in connection with the Local District Act when a new local district or service district is created. It requires that the creating entity pass a resolution stating whether they themselves will be providing the services to be provided by the local district or whether another entity will be doing that. In the past week, we've had a conversation as an administration and with each of you as well on the council regarding the potential creation of our own fire service district. And staff has recommended to each of you independently, but we'll also re-emphasize that here in this open meeting, that it would actually be just as beneficial and perhaps even more so from an administrative standpoint to combine fire services within our current Harriman City Safety Enforcement Area, which is the local district that we have created for our police. Under the Local District Act, we can combine services, so you are capable of providing, I believe, up to 4 different types of services within one local district. So that would be permitted under the act. We would also be able to collect the tax that we would have collected under our own fire service district that UFSA was collecting in HCC, which again is our police service district. So residents would not be seeing an increase. Again, it will just be a difference of who is collecting the tax. With that in mind, this proposed resolution, I think, still serves some value in that it is letting residents know and formalizing on the record that we are still not going to be providing the fire services within Harriman City. We are going to continue to contract with UFA to do that, and those will be funded, as we are now proposing, by collecting those taxes through our Harriman City Safety Enforcement Area, which already exists and which would represent a similar tax change that was proposed under our proposed fire service district.
Chase, that begs 2 questions. Number 1, does that prohibit us from ever forming our own fire service district or provide our own fire services if we wanted to?
No, is the answer to that.
Okay. And the second question is, what are the circumstances under which we would have to dissolve the services that we're currently engaged contractually with UFA to provide? How is that unwind? I'm not sure that I have the details on or understand the details on how we would unwind that relationship, what the time frame is, and how that works.
So that's all contractual. I would have to look at that. I don't know the specifics of that, but that, I mean, there are other agencies that have done that. I know Draper has done that recently where they terminated that contract with UFA. But the yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Henderson.
Technically, we would be what's called a direct member rather than having a contract for service. A direct member as part of the interlocal agreement, and the interlocal agreement dictates terms of withdrawal and how that would happen.
12 months.
I guess I'm just curious as whether or not that's a 30-day, 3 months, 6 months, 12 month. I mean, what's our process if that's something we did decide to do? How long are we obligated to UFA?
I can look at
I'm pretty sure the interlocal on that is 12 months.
12 months.
Yeah, we'd have to check the interlocal, but I think Clint's right. It's 12 months.
So
And you can always do it faster, but that gives both parties time to plan and prepare.
Yeah, understood. And again,
There's a
none of us have had a discussion. There's nothing planned to set up our own Harriman Fire Department here. But I'm just curious, so even if we did start, we would be at, this memorandum is saying, when we separate, we will not be starting our own fire service.
Yep.
But this doesn't say that we could change our mind late in January to say next January we're going to set it up, and we would be on the 12-month clock then. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, the local district can change the manner in which they offer those services and provide those services. Under the act, it's just required that you delineate from the get-go how those services are going to be provided.
Understood.
And that's
Thank
what this does.
Thank you.
And I'll just reiterate for the public that for those of you who look at your property tax bills, which I hope everyone does, line by line, instead of seeing UFSA taking out a chunk of money, you're going to see an increase on your Harriman City Safety, but that increase isn't meaning that our police department is now taking more. It's the safety. It's going to combine both the fire and the police. So there won't be an overall increase of your taxes. It will be the same tax rate. You'll just simply be putting it under a different heading.
That's correct.
They'll say UFSA zero out.
Yeah, exactly. That the one will go away, the other one will look like a
And that will
dramatic
be combined
increase.
with the other one.
It's just, but it won't be a line item for fire. It will be combined with the safety enforcement area.
Yes.
And I think when speaking with each of you during the week, it was mentioned multiple times that this was one of the intentions of the Harriman City Safety Enforcement Area, was to potentially combine these, right? The
Yeah.
name of it implies that it's not just for police, but rather for
Yeah.
safety services, which would include fire and EMS, so.
But that being said, we are also, just for budget-wise, just so that the public is aware, being very cognizant of those are two different pockets.
Yes.
The police have their budget and the fire department has theirs, and those will be treated very separately, even though they're brought in under the same enforcement agency.
Could you make a comment, Chase, to any feedback you received from our police chief? I don't know if Chief Carr's around or is on the line, if he wanted to make that statement himself, but if he's
Yeah,
not,
so
could you?
I've chatted with him extensively about this, and just so everyone is aware, the money comes into the same pot, but it can be divided up a number of different ways.
Yeah,
And you, as the board of HCC, pass a budget every year, and that budget can absolutely keep the funds as the way they are for the police and appropriate certain funds for UFA. The benefit that we have currently is our rate with UFA is established by contract. So we know each month, each quarter, each year, what funds we are going to need to satisfy that obligation. So that makes budgeting a lot easier for this body, but they absolutely can be portioned out.
Yeah, maybe I should have said that it's going to come into the same pair of pants, but it can be put in different pockets.
Correct, yes, correct. That's exactly right.
Wow, that's a pretty good analogy there, Sherry.
So when the motion is made, we need to change this to say fire, Harriman City.
Yeah, so with,
Safety
let
Service.
me pull that up one more time. In exchange of HCFSA, which is the Harriman City Fire Safety Area, which is what we had proposed be created, it would simply be HCC, so HCSEA, the
Harriman City Safety Enforcement
Safety
Area.
Enforcement Area. And that would only apply to the effective language, meaning not the recitals, but the language.
We didn't make a motion.
We haven't
yet,
made a motion yet.
But we're about to.
Do you want to make a motion?
I'd be happy to make a motion. Motion to approve resolution number R43-2020, confirming that Harriman City shall not provide the services proposed to be provided by the Harriman City Safety Enforcement Area.
Correct.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Steve and a second by Sherry. Any further discussion? All right, Clint,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
and I will vote yes, that motion passes. That brings us to the end of our general meeting agenda. Future meetings, we will have a joint Harriman City Planning Commission and Harriman City Council meeting at 6 p.m. on December 16th. That will be our last meeting for the year. The next Planning Commission meeting will be January 7th. The next City Council meeting will be January 13th. The work meeting starts at 5:30, and the regular meeting starts at 7 p.m. We are doing some holiday events. There is a virtual Christmas concert at 7 p.m. on December 11th. So please tune into that. Our orchestra always does an amazing job. December 21st, there will be story time with Santa and Mrs. Claus. That will be online at 7 p.m. on December 21st. We do also want to make the public aware that on the 24th and 25th of December, the offices here at City Hall will be closed for the holiday. So please be aware that the 24th and 25th, we will not have any services provided in the City Hall that day. With that, I will accept a motion to move into closed session.
Motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to convene in closed session for the purpose to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation and the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated section 52-4-205 after a brief intermission.
Very brief. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
I vote yes, that motion passes. For those of the public that are in attendance, just so that you're aware, we are moving into closed session. When we come out of closed session, we will have to come out into a public meeting to officially adjourn, but there'll be no further actions or discussion taken at that time, so we will not rebroadcast any further portion of this meeting, and there will be nothing further to attend. Thank you for your participation. We appreciate it.